Okay, first order of business, we're looking for an adoption of the minutes from our May 29th meeting, moved by Councillor Morocco, seconded by Councillor Gates. Any discussion to the minutes? Yes, Councillor Wing?
Yes, I emailed the clerk this afternoon. I don't have it here. It was with regards to the conflict I declared last time on the $1 million grant to the soccer club. The reason wasn't what was stated in the minutes, but it was because I had recently gone on the public record proposing that $1 million be used for another project of which I'm a proponent.
We'll make the correction.
Okay. The clerk will make the correction. Yes, Councillor Gates?
Yeah, Mayor Diodati, just on the committee of the whole recommendations that we're going to move back to staff to take another look at the noise level on Portage Road, the speed control follow-up review. So I just wanted to make sure it reflects in the minutes.
Okay, Mr. Clerk?
Well, that'll be reflected in tonight's minutes because it'll be part of your ratification from committee downstairs. So it'll be reflected in the next set of minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to keep half an eye on that just in case it slips through. We don't miss that. Any other comments to the motion receiving the minutes of our May 29th meeting? Then we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Carrio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under the consent agenda, report 2012-16, the Clarkson Cup event again. I was the owner of the hotel that hosted the Clarkson Cup last year, and we would probably be bidding on it again this year if it happens, so I'm going to declare conflict.
Okay. All right. Noted. Councillor Wing.
Yes, bylaw 2012-42. I have a close business relationship with the director of the organization, and my husband volunteers for it.
Okay. That's noted. Any other disclosures? Okay, moving on. Presentations and deputations. I see a lot of blue shirts in the audience. I think I know why. First up, we have the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and next up we would invite the co-chairs, Connor Bitter and Andrea Worster, who will outline to Council the committee's activities over the school year as we're coming toward the end of the school year. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
And Andrea, we remember you when you first started. You were such a quiet, meek person. Is that right? And
yeah, not so much.
You've come out of your shell, have you?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. We are proud to be here representing the 2011-2012 cohort of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee. My name is Connor Bitter.
And my name is Andrea Worster, and we are the co-chairs this year's MIAC. Mayor's Youth is a group of 25 students, 5 from each high school, and we strive to make Niagara Falls a youth-friendly place to live, and we do this through our volunteering, event planning, and advertising City Council. In an attempt to become more in tune with the needs of young people in Niagara, last year MIAC held a youth forum with students from each high school participating. This year, the committee took on, as part of their advocacy initiative, as a rotating hangout aimed at providing youth with unique recreational opportunities, and we ran events such as Rink at the Brink Night, which was a discount arranged for Niagara Falls youth to come skating.
We hosted a movie night at the library.
We also did a chill-out cafe, which featured coffee house-style performances by various student performers.
And we held a concert night at the Seneca Theatre here on Queen Street featuring Keek as well as 2 other local Niagara bands. The events were very successful, and it was made clear to us that our work was appreciated by those who came out. A staple event for the Mayor's Youth, our 10th annual citywide Battle of the Bands, was a huge success. Though the Teens on Queen portion of this year's event was rained out, we were still able to host an event attended by hundreds of students. The winning band was for the first time from St. Paul Catholic High School. This year we also introduced a wildcard category where musical acts outside the genre of rock could participate. St. Paul also captured the title for that event.
Keeping with tradition, MIAC also participated in the Community Clean Sweep and Adopt a Street program. As a part of our continued environmental advocacy, MIAC participated in many initiatives of helping Niagara become more environmentally friendly. As you know, MIAC members represented the youth voice in regards to the plastic water bottle ban issue. We also supported city staff in implementing the Blue W program, in which many MIAC members also volunteered for.
Volunteering is definitely something MIAC prides ourselves in. This year, we sent representatives to help out the community outreach out of the cold initiatives. Students helped prepare and serve food for those less fortunate in the winter months.
As we wrap up this year, we would like to thank you for your continuing support of MIAC. It really makes a difference. We have both grown immensely as leaders and are thankful for the opportunity to make a difference, and will continue to strive to make a difference as well. We hope that you'll continue to support the voice of young people in Niagara, since, as you have seen, we are capable of making a significant impact on our community.
Well, first of all, we want to say on behalf of all of council, we're very, very proud of you, and we know that you're the leaders, not just of tomorrow, today. You're leaders now. And every one of you has leadership within you. You just have to work on it and bring it out. And it's obvious by your leadership with the water bottle ban, regarding your participation in the recycling, the tree planting, whatever you guys do is a big success. Maybe I can ask, out of the group here, how many of you will be leaving for finishing school? You'll be going on to college or university. Can you show your... Yeah. All right, well, you know what? We'd like to, on behalf of all of council and all the residents of Niagara Falls, we appreciate, and I see so many familiar faces that I've seen you over the years. You're a great group of people, and you've made us so proud, and all we ask you to remember is don't forget where you came from. Go out, get your education, get your life experiences, and bring them back here and enrich our community, because this council has got a lot of big plans that's going to make Niagara Falls very youth-friendly and very solid for opportunities for employment or small business entrepreneurial activities as well. So go out, do your thing, and make sure you come back. So we'd like to say thank you very much for all of your commitment and your leadership. So thank you. Councilor Iannone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have any potential future doctors in the audience? Because we could sign them now, and we'll just preempt that. Come back.
We need everything, guys. We don't want you to leave the area and not come back. And a lot of us went away for school, and we did come back. There's lots of opportunity, and obviously we're going to need a lot of leadership. So, like I said, get your life skills and come back and utilize them right here, because we want you back. So thank you very much, and have a great summer.
You too.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, the Big Move Cancer Ride. I understand we have Sandra Sabo here, COO, and Norm Cavison. Is Norm? Hey, there he is. Hey, Norm, how are you? Regarding the Big Move Cancer Ride. Welcome.
Oh, that's right.
Good evening.
Situation.
Pardon me?
It's a different situation.
Yes.
Mayor Diodati and councillors of the City of Niagara Falls, thank you very, very much for allowing us to be here this evening. I've asked Norm Cavison, dear friend of the St. Catherine's General Hospital Foundation, and also obviously a local resident of Niagara Falls. He has participated since day one and ridden with his family. And their team is called Team Jackie because they decided that they needed to participate and do something big. And I'm asking you, all of you here in the room this evening, to please consider joining us Sunday, September the 9th, in support of the Walker Family Cancer Center. And kudos to all of these wonderful young folks that are here, and they have been so successful with their youth group. I would ask you as well to consider coming out and volunteering, if at all possible. So, if you would like to ride a 50-kilometer on your bike, a 100-kilometer, or 100 miles.
Does it have to be a pedal bike?
No, it doesn't. That's actually a good question, Vince, because we have decided to add something new this year. On site at Club Roma, under the pavilion, we're also going to have on-site spinning. So you could also register, have your minimum pledge, and spin for 3 hours. But if you decide that you don't like to last for an hour...
You just passed out. Hold on.
Yes, they'll be there. We have many doctors actually that have participated. But just to explain what the Big Move Cancer Ride is about, I would like to ask you to watch this very short video, and this explains it all. Thank you.
Oh, there. Oh, yeah.
I'm a pickpocket, I like to term myself. I look for money for this cause, and I've been very successful thanks to a lot of friends and family and even enemies.
But I'm riding in honor, in memory of my husband, and in honor of a niece.
is my second bike ride for the big move, and it's been inspiring to get out with her as well as other friends and family to get some proper exercise as well as for a good cause.
She died of pancreatic cancer. She was honestly like a really amazing woman. She battled it for a while, and sadly she passed away. And yeah, and we all miss her.
She used to teach my girls piano. She sang with the Canadian Opera Company. She died with bone marrow cancer. So I'm doing it for her. Yeah, strong lady.
Fantastic, a great day, great weather, lots of riders, and this is the third annual and we want to keep doing it. It's just a fantastic way to build for cancer care, one pedal at a time. It's a fantastic day.
Now, you might be asking yourself, wow, 50 kilometers. I haven't been on a bike for years. Well, over 5 years ago, when I started creating and organizing this event with a group of volunteers that still continue to be on our committee, I thought to myself, geez, if I'm going to be selling this Big Move Cancer Ride, I'm going to have to do it. I hadn't been on my bike in over 10 years. I didn't even have a bike that I could ride. So I started joining the group every Thursday evening, and training rides that continue every Thursday. We now have added training rides every Sunday out of White Oaks with a great group of trained individuals that are teaching us hills, teaching us how to be comfortable on the road and safe riding. So the first year I completed the 50 kilometer. Second year I completed the 100 kilometer. And I even had a flat tire, but I still wasn't the last one to come in on the finish line. Now, the second video is very short, and it does explain just how easy it is to complete this ride.
Knowing that the struggles that others are going through with cancer, and hey, I can knock off a 50K bike ride and piece of cake. But there's a lot of other people that have, much bigger problems. So I'm happy to do it, and we'll do it 10 times over again.
Thank you. What I would like to stress is all of the funds raised are staying in our community of Niagara. Everything is supporting equipment at the Walker Family Cancer Center. More than 2,500 people each year in Niagara are told they have cancer. Yes, we currently have chemotherapy treatment at the St. Catharines site, but once the Walker Family Cancer Center opens, all of those folks having to travel to Hamilton, Toronto, or London for their radiation will no longer have to travel outside of our community of Niagara. Last year, we hosted 535 riders. As of today, we have secured 535 riders. Our goal this year is to have 700 riders. We have raised $1.18 million in the first 3 years toward equipment for the Walker Family Cancer Center. And this year, we hope that we will have raised our goal of $2 million. But we will continue hosting this event and encouraging everyone in the community to join us. I have visited every municipality and asked the mayors, the councillors to consider joining a team, having a challenge. Talk about it to your families and friends. If you can't ride, perhaps you might consider pledging a rider. Norm and his family are registered again this year. They're going to be out there. or perhaps your children would consider volunteering. It's a great opportunity for volunteer hours for our youth in our community. It's a great event. It starts and finishes at Club Roma. The times are staggered so that once everyone finishes their ride, we have a party. It's a great lunch. It's a wonderful party and a great, great day. So I do appreciate you allowing me to tell you about the Big Move Cancer Ride, and now I'm going to ask Norm to finish. Thank you.
What am I going to say? She talked about not riding for 10 years. Well, I hadn't ridden a bike in 50 years. And I'll tell you, I went out and bought it, and after I lost my wife 3 years ago, and they treated her great at the oncology department. And I said to the family, I said, it's time we gave something back. So my 3 girls and I, we rode in the last 3 races, or rides, and we did the 50-kilometer each time. And between the 4 of us, we've raised close to $20,000 in the 3 years for it. So I think that's a So I see there's a lot of people in here that could probably ride a bike. And why don't you get a team together? It's you're a good rider. Well, your wife's a good rider. So I'm sure that we could get enough people out there to do a good job, because I'll tell you, we need the center here. It's very important.
Well, you know, I think known Norm for a long, long time, and you know, and obviously always been a big part of our community. And I know I overheard during the video our CAO say, piece of cake, I heard him say when he talked about the ride. Now, he's also a rider, and maybe between our CAO and our staff and our council, we can put a team together. So I'm not going to put him on the spot right now, but we're going to talk about cake later on, okay? So we'll find out how much...
Awesome. Thank you.
He did it, and he said he did it last year.
I'll tell you, it's not as hard as you think, really. It's just a matter of riding.
Now, let me ask you a question.
And you're not racing, you're riding.
Are there mountain bikes in this thing? So
yes.
It's not just street bikes.
There's tricycles, there's mountain bikes. In fact, one girl roller skated all the way for 50 kilometers.
Wow.
Another lady walked it.
Another lady walked.
We have tandems.
They have tandems, they have 3-wheelers, they have everything.
That's right.
So,
well, we appreciate you coming to make us more aware, and including our television audience. There's about 3 people watching us right now, so between them, yeah, maybe 4. But there actually surprisingly are quite a few people that can't sleep at night. They do watch us, and we appreciate that. But we're going to take this brochure. We're going to post this on the city's bulletin board. We have an internal bulletin board, and maybe we could look at doing something on our website to encourage participation within our people. Yes? And you've got a...
And I'm going to ask staff to put this up within City Hall, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Absolutely. Well, what do you say? We have a motion here to... Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I'd move that we have staff put that in all of our city facilities so that we can encourage people to ride. And if you put a team together, I will ride.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Wow. Buy a lottery ticket.
He has a portable defibrillator.
Yes.
All right, well, there you go. We've already got a pledge. We've got a motion by Councillor Iononi, seconded by Councillor Morocco, that we put the posters up at all of our facilities. We're going to put it on our internal electronic bulletin board and possibly our website as well. Did you want to make that part of it, Councillor, that we put a little icon on our website as well to the Cancer Ride? And which does have significant hits. So we've got a motion. Is there any discussion to the motion? Okay, then we'll call that vote. All those in favor? All right, and our objective is going to be to put a team together between our staff and our city council, and hopefully we'll be coming back to you with... How many on a team? Is there a minimum?
No, no minimum.
Okay, so it could be a team of 1? We could do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right.
Absolutely.
The only reason I publicly said it so that I would force myself to do it, because to me it sounds almost impossible. But I know that these guys are going to come with me.
Awesome. That's marvelous.
And my family, because my kids can do it too.
No, it's not impossible.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing all of you in September. Have
September
a great summer.
9th. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Mayor's Youth Advisory, you're not sticking around for the excitement? Thanks very much. Yeah, Mayor's Youth Advisory, if any of you want to write on this, if you're going to be around on September 9th, contact our office. Okay. Yeah. All right. Moving on, we're moving into planning matters. I would now ask our city clerk to introduce the next item on our agenda.
Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city's zoning bylaw to permit a retail convenience store. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, May 11th, 2012, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name in the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I now ask our Planning Director, Mr. Hurlovich, to explain the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Worship. This property involves the Big B variety store on Montrose Road. It's located where Preakness intersects with the driveway that leads to the Regional Recycling Center. In the surrounding area, there's a Shoppers Drug Mart commercial development to the west side of Montrose Road, as well as townhouses and residential development on the west side. On the east side of Montrose Road are largely industrial properties. I mentioned the Regional Recycling, as well as concrete manufacturing industries as well in that location. Well, that was fast. In any event, thank you, Dean. The site for this property shows the existing building. There's a convenience store on the ground floor. There are two residential units on the second floor, which were allowed by bylaw previously. The applicant is looking to allow the convenience store to operate on a permanent basis. So far it's been allowed on a temporary basis for 2 3-year terms, so it's been in existence for 6 years. They're also seeking then to recognize in the bylaw a number of items that have been dealt with over the years, but put these in on a permanent basis. The reduction in lot frontage from our standard 30 meters down to 21 meters, which is the existing width. Reduction in the rear yard depth from 7.5 meters to 1.8 meters. This is side abuts the regional recycling center, and as well they're looking for a reduction in the minimum lot area from 2,000 square meters down to 1,300 square meters. There's sufficient parking on the site to serve both the store and the residential units. The majority of the parking is provided behind the building with access off the regional right-of-way. The request is for the site is 1,395 square meters, 0.34 of an acre. As I've mentioned, they've been allowed on a temporary basis. It's zone light industrial now, with all of these uses added as a temporary use. We did have a neighborhood meeting on May the 9th. No one attended that meeting. This is an air photo showing the location of the property, and you can see the industrial uses to the north, south, and east of the building. The official plan designates the land as industrial. The industrial designation does allow for convenience stores that would primarily serve the industrial district. The use is not to perform a major or significant commercial function, so that it doesn't compete with the planned community commercial facilities, and the planned commercial facilities in this case where the Shoppers Drug Mart is located across the street. The 2 3-year terms have allowed a sufficient test period to demonstrate that the small scale of the store does not compete with the phased commercial development across the street. In fact, Shoppers Drug Mart sells many of the same products: milk, butter, eggs, bread. So both properties seem to coexist significantly. Convenience store is easily accessed to the industrial properties it's meant to serve. The zoning, as I mentioned, is currently a light industrial zone. The retail store is not impacted, therefore we can support that as a continued use. I mentioned the reduction and the special site provisions are required for the lot area, lot frontage, and accessory garage rear yard depth, and to recognize on a permanent basis the 2 dwelling units on the second floor. All of those are to be included. Therefore, the amendment can be supported, and we're recommending that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application to permit the convenience store on the property on a permanent basis. Those are the highlights of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Erlovich. Any questions from Council? Seeing none, members of the public are advised that a failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheet will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 3419 of the Planning Act. Council will now hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this amendment. So anyone here other than the applicant? Seeing none, Council will now hear from the applicant or his or her representative.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Your Worship, members of Council, I'll be brief. As Mr. Herlovich noted in his report, the conditions are all existing, and they've been in existence for the past 6 years. So I think it's fairly straightforward. So I think if there's just any questions to the application, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay, Councilor Morocco, then Councilor Thompson.
I just move with a recommendation.
Okay, moved by Councilor. Okay, well, we haven't closed the meeting, but when we do. Any questions to the applicant? Okay, seeing none. No other questions from Council? Okay, we'll close the meeting. Councilor Morocco makes the motion, and seconded by Councilor Thompson. Any discussion to the motion? Call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. All right, next up we have subject MW 2012-29 peer review of development charges, background study, and policies. And I would look to Mr. Holman. Is there anything you want to present on this?
No, Mr. Mayor. Just a bit of background on the peer review. This is not the background study that's required to create a new bylaw. This is simply a peer review of our previous practices with the intent of highlighting some of the areas where there are some gaps and deficiencies, and the direction is to move ahead and deal with those matters specifically. Because they take some time, it's difficult to bring them all in one report. So we've engaged the services of Hemson Consulting. Craig Binning is here this evening to take us through the process, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be before Council yet again. I really have a fairly brief presentation of about 10 to 15 minutes, and I've been asked before I get into the issue of the peer review just to touch on a few of the critical points relative to development charges. As a very brief overview, development charges are a fiscal tool that's made available to municipalities to fund growth-related capital infrastructure. They're a primary funding source for that capital for many municipalities across the province and increasingly across Canada and throughout North America. The concept or the term that you often hear with development charges is that growth should pay for growth, and that the financing of that infrastructure should not place an undue burden upon your existing ratepayers. When the development charge legislation was overhauled in 1997, there were some significant changes to it. The key to the municipalities is that a number of services were no longer eligible for inclusion for recovery through development charges, even though there's likely development or growth-related impacts to them. Those services are up on the screen before you today. Critical ones for the city would include the cultural and entertainment facilities and tourism facilities. We can no longer fund those through development charges. Also critical to your residents are things like waste management as provided by the region, but in general this was a downward pressure on the rates and the recovery and placed the burden of funding that infrastructure upon your existing ratepayers. Furthermore, the legislation then continued to create categories of service for funding or eligibility through development charges. Basically, the Act created a group of services that are considered to be 100% cost recovery. So when the development-related costs are determined, you can take 100% of that cost forward into the development charge calculation. you can see that that primarily relates to what we often call the engineered or the hard services, your roads, your sewer, your water, and the stormwater management and sanitary sewer. Those are the critical services for the city. Included in 100% cost recovery, but not on this slide, are protection services of police and fire. In addition to that, all other eligible services, we can take forward 90% of the cost into the calculation. The other 10% has to be funded from other sources. But it includes the things like your parks and recreation, library, transit, and growth-related studies. The final point I'd make on this slide is that actually the Act provides for a very broad definition of capital costs, and basically it's any cost that the municipality incurs to get that infrastructure in place or to expand the capacity, including everything from land acquisition to improvements to studies and to various furniture and equipment related to those facilities. However, one of the key things that you probably have heard time and time again, especially from various mayors across the Greater Toronto Golden Horseshoe, is that development charges actually don't fully fund growth, largely due to the legislative restrictions in place through the 1997 Act. The statutory limitations such as ineligible services, the 10% service discounts, intensification examples, and the historic service level limitations. Those all have placed a downward pressure on development charge rates across the province. Furthermore, many municipalities, including the City of Niagara Falls, also impose their own exemptions and discounts for certain types of developments and activities, including affordable housing, brownfield redevelopment, and downtown community improvement project areas. Those are usually tied with various economic development initiatives, or in the case of affordable housing, just trying to make your community more accessible. The result of that, though, is that you're deferring the recovery of growth-related capital costs through development charges, and clearly those costs have to be borne by other sources. So that was a very quick overview of some of the key things to development charges. What I'll spend the next few minutes now talking about is the peer review that Hempson was retained to undertake. Back some time ago, City issued the RFP to retain a consultant to review your last development charge study. The intent was just to determine whether or not there were any things done in that last background study that could be improved upon, and also to undertake what we'll call a best management practice, comparing both your last background study and your current development charge bylaw with policies and practices in other jurisdictions across the province. The idea behind this is that the peer review positions you to undertake your next development charge update study in a more fulsome manner. Your current bylaw, I believe, expires in 2014, as bylaws have a maximum life of 5 years. I understand that you may consider updating that bylaw sooner rather than later, and some of the things that we've identified through this peer review are things that you can be doing between now and when you begin that update, and certainly as part of that update. There were really three key things that we were retained to do as part of that peer review. The first was the technical review of the actual calculations and the way that the Act was applied here to the city. The second deals with how one determines what are local services. The importance of that is those are the ways that we determine what costs are borne directly by the development community through their subdivision or site plan agreements, and those shares of costs that are funded through the development charge calculations. The third bullet here then deals with that best practice survey, where we looked at 12 other municipalities and compared their bylaws with the city's bylaw and made a series of recommendations on different practices. The final point was one that came out through the process through some excellent dialogue with your staff, and we came forward with some other policy recommendations and findings that are included in the detailed background study or peer review. I'm just going to touch on each of those points briefly with you. So the review of the study itself, and this was a technical review of the various calculations and the way that service levels have been determined in the background study, and we determined that there were some things within the background study that could be done in a more comprehensive manner, such as those service level calculations, looking at the way costs are allocated between different types of development and the recoveries, and then finally giving a more comprehensive examination of the financing or cash flow issues incurred by the city as a result of delivering the capital programs. It's our opinion that each of those factors could result in a higher calculated maximum development charge that could be imposed here in the city. And we have made a series of recommendations of things that you'll want to give some detailed review of as part of your next update. We spent some excellent time working with your staff reviewing your existing local service definitions, policies, and practices. So once again, the importance of this is that it outlines the way in which you delineate the services, primarily your engineered services, in terms of what you're going to ask the development community to contribute directly through subdivision contributions, in terms of works that they're triggering immediately for their subdivision or site plan. And it also then delineates what costs you're going to consider for inclusion through the development charge calculations. Many municipalities over the last series of bylaw updates have been giving a more extensive review of those local service policies and practices and enhancing them. And there have been a couple of OMB decisions that have reinforced the municipal use of these local service definitions to secure greater levels of recovery through the development subdivision agreements. One of our key recommendations in the peer review is that the city, even now before the update of the study, begin to do a comprehensive review of those local service definitions and to begin to compile a new set. And we've given a series of identifications of practices in other jurisdictions upon which the city might like to draw upon. One of the things that we spent a significant amount of time with was doing a best practices survey. We looked at 12 municipalities from across the province, some here, other municipalities here in the region, and then others scattered throughout South Central Ontario. We intentionally avoided some of the larger DCA municipalities, but we did draw upon Burlington and some other municipalities that are facing similar circumstances to the city of Niagara Falls. And we walked through a whole series of different issues within those. Those are all outlined in the more detailed peer review, and we made a number of suggestions and recommendations about things that the city should consider as part of its next update. The things that we looked at as part of that is the way that you define terms in your bylaw, how one differentiates the charge between different residential and non-residential uses, various collection policies and practices, for example, when you collect your charge and the way in which you impose it, how you index your development charge for inflation or changes in construction costs, and then the various discounts and exemptions that go beyond those dictated by the legislation itself. And so we've, as I said, we've compared your bylaw with that and the other jurisdictions that have made a series of recommendations. Some of the key things that we identified here is that the city may wish to geographically delineate its development charge rates. As you seek to encourage further redevelopment and intensification within your built-up boundary area versus those in the greenfield, you may want to explore ways of differentiating the charge to try to encourage that intensification while maintaining your development charge revenue sources. The second bullet point is also critical here. The region has been going through a process of updating its development charges background study. It held a development charge public meeting, I believe it was on the 6th of June, and there's some significant changes going through for the region's bylaw and the way it imposes its charges, both from the way it calculates them, the way it establishes what types of units will be levied, and it's important the city continue to review that and account for that in terms of its own update. It's my understanding that they're looking at consideration of adoption of that bylaw in July of this year, and that the new rates, as proposed, would come into effect on the 1st of September. The final bullet point here is that within the city's own development charge bylaw, we would strongly recommend that the city look at reformatting and restructuring the bylaw itself to alleviate some of the redundancy that we see in it and some of the terminology. There's some differences from the front end to the back end. So we would think it would be prudent to restructure that entire bylaw and just to bring it into conformity, and also to give consideration to the region's bylaw, given that the city itself has to collect the charges on behalf of the region, so the degree to which you have consistency, as long as it's consistent with the directives of this council, makes it easier for implementation and for the development community to follow. One of the questions that we were asked at the front end, and I'm sure some of what you were asking today, is based on that peer review, would we recommend updating or amending your development charge bylaw at this time? In our opinion, the technical review of things, the calculation side of things, although it does identify some opportunities for enhancing the charge, we wouldn't suggest that it was sufficient enough to undertake the full review at this time. However, we have recognized that the city has continued to issue a number of building permits at a rate greater than what was identified in the previous study, and as such, you are foregoing some development charge revenue collections. Furthermore, the city has undertaken some additional studies of the cost of servicing growth since the completion of the last study, most notably the Transportation Master Plan, and it goes out to a longer planning horizon. So in that regard, there are some factors there that could enhance your recoveries and ensure that your rates are properly reflected. And I noticed in the covering staff report that they are recommending that Council give consideration to initiating the update later in this year, and I would support that recommendation. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, that's the end of my formal presentation. I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any members of Council that have questions for the presenter? Councillor Wayne?
Yes, I was a little surprised when I got to the part where it said that the review, the DC study doesn't warrant an amendment at this time, because certain things were jumping out at me as I read through the report and the executive summary, and I do remember us discounting the development charges, which the report points out shifted the financial responsibility and the risk onto the shoulders of the existing tax base. So instead of development paying for development, we shifted a lot of that, and I'm sort of really questioning our wisdom in doing so. In the executive summary, the part that says the city has been experiencing fiscal challenges in its ability to fund growth-related capital works, to me that's linked to the fact that we decided to discount the DC rates. And the other thing I need to ask about is in the review, there was a mention that the current DC rates do not include financing costs associated with the borrowing of funds, and that became kind of concerning because a few years ago we found out that we had, I think it was approximately a $10 million cost overrun on a couple of sewer extension projects, and I know that we were assured that all the monies, even the financing costs, would be recovered and this wouldn't be coming out of the taxpayers. That side of things, but I'm trying to rationalize that in light of the statement that the current DC rates don't include the financing costs associated with the borrowing of funds, because we definitely needed to borrow funds, I know, in order to close off those projects. And just the fact that we're issuing...
excuse me, Councillor Wayne. Could you mind
just
if...
to that point, I asked staff for the answer to that exact question today. And I asked whether how much property tax money has been used to pay back that debenture, and or how much of our current development charges did we use to pay back that debenture, because we gave our word standing here that we wouldn't use property tax dollars. I haven't got a response yet. Maybe they actually haven't.
Okay. Well, once we're done here, we'll ask staff if they've got that number yet, or if they still have to calculate it, or whatever the case may be.
Okay, so before, and I'll just finish, and then the fact that we're issuing permits at a rate greater than was forecast. To me, that suggests that, in light of everything else I've just covered, it might not be premature of us to look at adjusting our policy before the bylaw expires. Because, I know we're experiencing those fiscal challenges in relation to our ability to fund growth-related capital works, and if we were collecting what we should be collecting, then maybe those fiscal challenges wouldn't be as severe. If we have the means of enhancing our recoveries, then why wouldn't we?
Fair enough. Fair comment. I don't know, on that question, do we know, Mr. Harrison, what that number is?
I've stated, I've been asked this a couple of times before, and in your utility budget, the amount of the debenture for the 2 pumping stations is included as an expenditure, and there's an addition of the transfer from the development charges reserve fund, which 100% matches it, and it's a total offset. So to answer the question, no property taxes, nor has the utility budget funded that. It's been completely funded for the length of time since we've been paying the debenture from the development charges reserve fund.
So I think what Councillor Wing is saying is in the slide it said that financing costs currently are not included.
Well,
what does that mean?
I think it's apparent, if you recall the DC bylaw, the calculations, which is within the calculation, the actual financing charges were not known at the time. The the full amount of what was perceived to be or was expected to be borrowed was included. The financing, the interest charges on that debt wasn't included. There is an opportunity as we move forward with the future DCs to include DC bylaws to include the uncollected financing charges, i.e. the interest, in future DC bylaws to ensure, and that's what staff's position has always been. That's why we've asserted on a number of occasions that we would be collecting it from the DC charges in the future.
Councillor Wang?
I prefer to begin collecting it now and enhancing the revenue stream currently rather than waiting, especially given the admission that we've got some fiscal challenges here. So I don't know, my preference would be to step it up, and I'd be interested in seeing what my colleagues think.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Mayor Diodati. Yeah, I have a few questions, and actually I think it's you did a pretty good job on this. I enjoyed some of the read. I guess some of the things that, and I may repeat it, but the rates established under the current bylaw was significantly discounted. How much money are we talking there?
Mr. Mayor, through you, as part of this process, we haven't gone back and tried to calculate the amount of lost development charge revenue as a result of the reduction of the rates or the exemptions or discounts.
Would staff have that figure?
Okay, we can maybe add to staff. I know that number. No, not tonight.
No, that's fair.
Mr. Mayor, that was not really part of the assignment. The issue did come up, and given the timing, we kind of set that aside. I think that's a good number to know, especially as we get in to the background study, just so we can understand what exemptions, what discounting actually means in terms of dollars, and that goodwill at the time actually translates to in terms of dollar figures. That'll be part of the exercise that we'll work towards and have some firm numbers available for you when the background studies start.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I guess the reason why I asked that question is that significantly is a strong word. It's not a weasel word. That it's a very strong word, and that's why I asked the question around what type of dollars are we talking about. And I think it is, and I'm going to go through a few of these because I put them out. I think it's fair to say that the discounted DC charges rate shifted the financial responsibility. It's in your report and risked onto the shoulders of the existing tax base. I think that's in your report as well. And I want to make sure it's fair to say that with the debt of the city, we should better optimize our entitlement to DC charge fees. So obviously with our debt being at $80 million, obviously one way to bring that down was to maybe fix this particular problem. And in your report, something that was very interesting to me as well, it said, I'd like you to, could you explain what you consider moderate growth in the residential sector over the past decade? Because I think that's an interesting statement as well. Because we've been having that dialogue actually around this room is that just how much growth has really been in Niagara Falls. So maybe you could enlighten me on that particular statement.
It's just made in the context of overall development patterns in throughout Southern Ontario. The region of Niagara tends to have a more moderate rate of growth than perhaps we see in other jurisdictions, but many municipalities across the Greater Golden Horseshoe have experienced lower rates of growth over those last periods of time. So we're recognizing that the economic slowdown has impacted not only Niagara Falls, but other parts of the province as well, so it's been more moderated than anticipated in some regards. But your study was fairly conservative in terms of the anticipated amount of development actually. So
I'll agree with that word conservative, because I think you're right on that. The other issue, more to Councillor Wing's point, on the issuing of building permits, should we take a look at doing that based on growth, demand, and maybe need, rather than losing out on some of these development charges, because obviously we may be losing a substantial amount of money on that as well? In your expert advice here.
Mr. Mayor, I may need clarification on the question. There's the timing of the collection or when the charges get updated?
Well, it said in your report that it sounds to me that because of the discounting, a number of developers are building maybe homes or businesses or whatever to take advantage of the discount, even though in reality we might not need those today. But it is causing a shortfall in revenue when it comes to DC charges. I guess that's where I'm trying to get to.
Well, certainly under your current charges that are set less than what they could have been even under your last background study, every time a permit is drawn and development charges are paid, you're foregoing certain recoveries, and that under the Act, that foregone revenue has to be funded from another source, which falls to your property tax base and your utility rates.
Okay. Just a couple other points. I asked I guess this is more a question to staff too. It says that the report, this has been going on since 2009 on this particular, what we've been doing for the last number of years. Were we doing that prior to 2009? Would staff know that?
I think, Mr. Mayor, it means the current bylaw has been in place that long. We've been underdoing the peer review for about the last year, but the existing bylaw has been in place since 2009.
Okay, and I may have some more after I listen to our fellow councils, but I really read the report. I think it's money well spent, and I'm glad it came out of DC charges.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carrio?
Thank you, Your Worship. In your presentation, you suggested that you did some comparisons with other municipalities. I would be interested to see how we compare with the rates with other municipalities as well, whether we're high, whether we're low, or in the middle, where do we fit?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the comparison with other municipalities was in terms of the best practices with regards to policies and implementations. We didn't do a rate comparison here. That's a more detailed exercise, and you really need to add in both the upper and lower tiers to ensure that you're comparing like with like. And as a general comment, the development charge rates in the region of Niagara tend to be at the lower end of those that we see in South Central Ontario.
Do you not think that it's important for us to look at that when we set our rates, to have that in our mind?
In my opinion, municipalities need to set their development charge rates, or at least calculate them consistent with the legislation, which is prescriptive in terms of what are your service levels and what are the services and the cost of providing the services. And those vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction based on the demands, based on the rates of growth, and based on the historic service levels. And I would rather ensure that you're funding the appropriate amounts of money through your development charges rather than necessarily making a comparison with other jurisdictions.
Also, along the line of the questioning that Councillor Gates had, do you think that there's a possibility that we're getting a higher average or greater than our growth forecast because our rates are a bit better?
Potentially that's influencing things. Development is influenced by many different factors, and that certainly could be contributing to it.
And then could we assume that if that's the case, then the sooner that we issue these permits, the sooner that we add those people to the tax base, which would then lower people's taxes, not raise people's taxes, because you'd be broadening the tax base. You'd have more people participating in the overall tax payment then.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, in my opinion, as a municipal finance person, the purpose of property taxes is to pay for the ongoing operating of infrastructure and facilities, and also to establish reserves for the long-term care and of that infrastructure. And development charges are intended to fund the initial emplacement of that infrastructure. So the addition of the assessment base certainly helps you with dealing with your operating costs and your long-term care and maintenance.
Yeah, I agree with you, but if you watch our council meetings on an ongoing basis, unfortunately our council is asked to contribute to many other things that normally would not be put on the backs of a city council. We seem to have a budget that includes many things, many organizations that normally a city council wouldn't have to pay for or wouldn't look at paying for. And my issue would be that the more people, if we're going to continue to do that, the more people we have to split those costs up, other than what you said, is better for the average taxpayer.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I actually appreciate the opportunity for this review to give us some comparison with other municipalities, but anybody who has been involved in the process knows that when you come to the final document, it's a public document, and you have the public come in and make their statements, and that's where there's usually some kind of balancing act, whether it's up or down. And in fact, I believe the previous development charges, which was appealed to the OMB, went on for several years before there was finally a resolution in favor of the people who were objecting. So this is a very delicate process that is balancing. But there was a similar discussion about development charges at the region this week, and from what I understand, a lot of people who attended that were rather shocked and surprised at the reduction. In fact, in some cases, 50% reduction in the development charges for residential and some other properties. Is that, why would they be moving in that direction at this time?
That was at the ICP meeting, which Integrated Community Planning meeting, which I'm not a member of. But when I saw that on the agenda, I had our staff notify some of the key players that were affected, including hotel operators, to make sure they were aware that this was coming forward so they could lobby now. So I don't know, I wasn't part of that to know why that direction was.
Maybe we could have a report back on that. Very interesting. But we got caught in the same situation when we approved the development charges in 2009 with the business community really coming in and saying, you're too high, you've got to reduce them. And we did do a reduction, particularly, I believe, in the hotel section, which stimulated hotel development. And so we end up winning on one hand, losing on the other hand. So there's a fine balance when you're dealing with development charges and trying to come up with the right figure. So long process, but I think we're on the right track with this study to get all the information and comparisons that we can. So I'm pleased to have this information.
Yeah, and maybe on that, that's a good question. I can't remember if it was Alex or Jeff had written me the note on that pre-package about the development charges at the region. Did one of you write me a note, or was it neither of you, or no? No one's admitting to it. All right, well, that's fine. No one's admitting to it. Maybe you guys can do some research and find out who wrote the note. Councillor Peter Angel.
Your Worship, I just wanted some clarity, actually, on the discounted development charge rate that we have here in the City of Niagara Falls. From the 2009 report that I read through before this meeting, and we didn't get it as a background, I had asked Mr. Arafita for it and appreciate that he gave it to me. The City of Niagara Falls has 3 separate development charges. We have one for residential, and then we have 2 for commercial. We have one that's inside what we call the CTA, or the core tourist area, and then we have one that's called OCTA, which is outside the core tourist area. Can I just ask staff to comment on which one of those are discounted? Because I think it's important to know. I mean, we keep throwing around this term, discounted development charges. And according to the report, I mean, they're not all discounted.
Who's that? Mr. Holman, you going to take this one?
Well, and perhaps I can even ask the consultant to, because they've done a lot of the research on that. Discounting occurs in a couple of ways. One, when you set your rates and you target a certain number, you're excluding the cost recovery for certain items that you already know the full capital costs of.
Your Worship, I'm sorry, if I could just clarify, and I apologize for cutting up Mr. Holman, but I wasn't looking for clarity on how it works. I really understand how it works. What I was looking for clarity on was that other people have, stood up tonight and said that the city has discounted development charges, but not in all 3 areas. I wanted staff to just simply clarify.
Which category?
Which ones were discounted.
Which category?
Not too sure. I can read from the report if you like.
Mr. Binning, do you know the answer to that?
I don't have the 2009 report with me. I think it was hotel development.
No.
I don't recall. I recall presentations here from the Home Builders Association. There were a number of hoteliers that were represented here, but I don't recall what the final what the changes were. Sorry.
Your Worship, perhaps it would be beneficial, for everyone to go through the 2009 report, as I have done. But I mean, the rates in residential do not appear to be discounted. They increased in 2009. The core tourist area, the recommendation in 2009 that first came forward from the consultant was to eliminate the core tourist area. what happened then was there was an argument, because in 1999 was when the core tourist area charge was put in to pay for all the development that was in the tourism sector. And the developers in the tourism area argued that since they had paid for all their own development, it wasn't right for staff now to take away that core tourist area charge and basically subject them to all the other charges in the city. Staff agreed with their position and kept the core tourist area charge. The only rate that was discounted was the OCTA, which is the commercial rate outside the core tourist area. And I mean, if you like, I'll just read a line from the report. And it says, with regard to the OCTA rate, staff recognized that an immediate increase from $2.80 per square foot to $6.06 per square foot would have a significant impact on any commercial development. In order to mitigate effects of the new rate increase, staff recommend that the OCTA rate be discounted to a rate of $4.43 per square foot, and this value represents the median value of the calculated increase. So I guess in looking at the report and reading through the recommendations, it's not all of the DC charges that are discounted, it's only 1 out of 3. And it came forward from a staff recommendation saying that to go from $2.80 per square foot to $6.06 per square foot, in their opinion, was too big of a jump. So when we talk about the fact that more permits have been taken out for home builders, I don't think that that's a factor. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we say that the rates are discounted, and perhaps that's why there's more permits being taken out for home builders. I don't believe so, because it doesn't clearly state here that those rates are discounted, because those rates increased in 2009.
So, Councillor, you're suggesting OCTA areas?
OCTA is the only one, Your Worship, in the report.
Thanks, Councillor. Mr. Mayor, I think the reference to discounting means that we're not charging the full amount that we would need to charge in order to cover our full costs. So yes, the rates did increase, but they did not increase to the full amount.
Okay. Your Worship, just to that point, it's great to get that information. It would have been better to get it in 2009. I mean, we can't be here now and be told that we have discounted rates on all 3 of these when we weren't told that in 2009. I guess that's my point.
Okay. All right. Councillor Maves.
Yes, Your Worship. I have a question for Mr. Benning. I like the way you sum things up here at the very last. It says it is also a general recommendation of this peer review that the city consider restructuring the format of its development charge bylaw. No other surveyed municipality has its development charges bylaw truncated into separate parts. This creates duplication of policies and, for example, multiple parts which contain definitions. It is recommended that the city consider a more consolidated version of a development charges bylaw. Are we too technical? Are we asking too many questions? Can you elaborate on how we simplify that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. The structure to your current bylaw is somewhat unique in the way it's broken down, and there's different sets of definitions in different parts of the bylaw relative to residential and non-residential, and then relative to some of the non-statutory exemptions. And in our opinion, it created a little bit of confusion about how the bylaw might ultimately be implemented. Most bylaws have a structure of all the definitions up front and then collection policies and practices, and it allows for a more consistent application of the bylaw, and some of the differences between what we see here in the region and then other jurisdictions here in the region of Niagara. We could see some opportunities for simplifying the bylaw and making it more transparent and readable both for your development community and for staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments right now or questions from council for Mr. Binning or staff? Okay, seeing none, what is the direction of council here? We have a recommendation from staff in the report. Move the recommendation, moved by Councillor Carrio, seconded by Councillor Maves. Is there any discussion to the recommendation? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Benning. Appreciate your second trip out. Okay. Yes, Councillor Gates.
Just clarify a point to Councillor Wing's point. Are we now going to take a look at maybe moving the bylaw up from 214? I don't think we clarified that. I know you raised it, or is that something that we'll wait till we can all get a copy of the 2009 report, and then maybe we can move a motion to do that later? Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to wait for that and then give direction?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, thank you. Moving on. Yes, Mr. Clerk.
So you're asking for the 2009 report? It's 60 pages, by the way. Do you want me to email it to you, or do you want me to print it out for you?
I can come and pick it up if you like, whatever easiest for you.
Okay. Everyone okay with an email?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone need a hard copy?
I don't know.
You don't need one? Okay. All right. So we're good. You can just email that. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay. Good. Mr. Chief is here. Perfect timing. We're just at the mayor's remarks. You know, your favorite part of the meeting? First off, I'll just let him get himself settled, and I'm going to ask our fire chief, Lee Smith. Recently, there was a rescue in the Niagara Gorge. Unfortunately, there have been people that find it a popular place to try to end their life. And there's a great story here of our staff stepping up and doing a major rescue in concert with the Niagara Parks Police in the USA Today. It was on CNN. It made international headlines about the way you guys did your rescue. So maybe I was hoping, Chief, if you could maybe share with the council, maybe just a... Pardon me? Yeah, big hand for you guys. And also maybe have an update on what you were just up to, where you're coming from.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just got back from being down at the falls, Table Rock, where the helicopter from the U.S. successfully transferred the rope line from the Canadian side to the American side, and so that's been taking place over the last few hours. There's a lot of setup involved and a lot of organization to do that. And it was successful, so they're going to then take the cable and pull it from the rope and eventually get the full cable that he's going to walk on across the gorge. So it was quite an event. There were a lot of people around. There's a lot of television crew, camera work, and large lighting trucks and things already set up down there. So they're getting ready, they're ramping up, and pretty soon they'll be all set to go. Now that was what was just happening now. As far as the rescue that happened on May 21st, we got a call from the Parks Police, and it was in the morning, and roughly, I think it was 10:21 actually was the time of the call. So we went down because there was somebody in the water, and what had happened was someone had actually gone over the falls and they survived the fall, and Parks Police were first on scene, and they helped to wrestle the person out of the water onto the shoreline. But it was a very difficult area because it's right down at the base of the falls where the outlook is from the journey behind the falls. And it was a very unstable situation. The person was deteriorating because of the injuries that they had sustained. So our personnel decided the safest way for them to get down was to actually rappel over the side of the gorge right near the falls and go down that way so they could get to the patient. And they did. We sent six people down. And it's a very steep slope. There's right at the water's edge is a steep talus kind of slope of sharp rocks. They're very slippery and they're wet all the time, so they have lots of algae all over them. And so they got to the water's edge with the Parks Police officer, stabilized the victim, packaged him in a rescue basket, and then with the special winch that we have on our aerial truck, put the aerial boom over the gorge and winched the victim up to the top and placed him in the hands of EMS. So that whole event took from the time we got our call to the time we got set up and everything and all the people over, stabilized, was about a 2-hour call. And that was pretty good timing because the initial reports were that the person was down near the Maid of the Mist docks. And so we had to relocate from our first response location and then start to set up the operation. So it was a very successful call from our perspective, and it really highlighted the cooperation that we received between agencies. And if it wasn't for the Parks Police doing what they did, us doing our bit, and EMS being able to take the patient from there, it may not have been so successful. And so it's a really good story of cooperation between agencies.
Congratulations. Well done. And we know that that's part of what you guys do every day, right? So that's great. Thank you very much for that. And also we encourage residents, if you're feeling depressed or you're having a hard time dealing with things, there's a 24-hour number. There is hope. It's 1-800-263-4945. 444, and you can call that 24 hours a day. We'll give you a quick update on what's been happening. Niagara Week was Niagara Week at Queen's Park in Toronto. Myself, along with a number of the other regional councillors, were there lobbying different ministries and opposition parties with a number of initiatives. And the good news, we did meet with the Minister of Health on our hospital issue, brought her up to date on this direction of this council, and we were very well received. And as well, a number of the other projects that this council's prioritized, we pitched them at the ministerial level, and keeping the dialogue, building the relationships. Number of councillors represented myself because obviously I can't be at all the events, and I want to acknowledge them because, you know, a lot of people don't appreciate that it's a big job, it's a full-time job, and even in Calgary when we met with Mike Strange, I mean, they didn't have a member of council that could meet us at the airport. It's just a big job, and this council always steps up and sends someone out. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of the events. Councillor Wing represented us twice, once at the March of Dimes, and she received an Accessible Niagara Award for the WeGo transportation system, and also an annual Qing Ming Festival. Councillor Wing, maybe you do have an award while we're on that one. Did you want to just mention what you received?
Sure. I was very happy to represent Niagara Falls and pick up this AccessibleNiagara.com award that we shared with the Niagara Parks Commission for our WeGo buses. And the AccessibleNiagara.com site is excellent. It's all about visiting the Niagara area and finding accessible accommodation, transportation, etc., to meet the needs. And we have, along with that, congratulatory letters from Rob Nicholson, our MP, and also from the region of Niagara. So I'll leave these with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well done, and thank you for being there. Also, regarding organ donor, this is just a reach out to all the staff and, thank you, and city councilors to consider signing your organ donor card. All you have to do is go to the website beadonor.ca. It just takes a couple of minutes. We had an interesting story. A young man is running. He's running with a torch relay from around the world. His brother died, and they were able to donate his organs and save 4 other people's lives. It was a real moving situation, and he met me at the Falls just last week, and he is meeting with all the city councils. So there's a challenge out there with who can sign the most. And I don't know about anyone else. I'm one of those guys, every year I look at that organ donor card and I don't fill it out. And I guess you just need a little bit of a push. And so this year I pledge that I'm going to fill mine out. You also have to go on the website to, as I say, beadonor.ca to give the actual permission. So what we're going to do, and what we're going to ask council to do, we have organ donor cards being delivered to us. We're going to give everybody one. So if it seems like something you'd like to do, we'd like to know about it so we can track it, and hopefully we can have a real solid number, because he will be coming back to Niagara Falls on his run. We'd love to give him some updated information. So we'd encourage everyone to go to that website, beadonor.ca, and let us know at the city if you in fact are going to be a donor. Also, Schools in Bloom Recognition Achievement Awards we recently had, where we acknowledged a number of recipients for doing beautiful work at their schools. Councillor Peter Angelo represented us at Italian Heritage opening night at the Illumination Tower, where they turned the falls red, white, and green. And I understand Councillor Peter Angelo sang some Italian songs for our guests. Is that right? We appreciate that. And hopefully a little later tonight you can sing one of them for us. That'd be great.
On camera?
On camera, yes, on camera. That's okay, yes. And also, I was able to help them. We had a band from Italy here as we raised the flag at City Hall to acknowledge the same issue. Also, Councillor Peter Angelo represented us at the International Women's Half Marathon. Councillor Peter Angelo being a marathon runner himself, it was very appropriate, and we appreciate him doing that. And Councillor Thompson ran in it in the women's marathon? Okay, great. Springalicious on the queue. Springalicious was our festival that took place downtown. The weather turned out good, and I understand the crowds were huge. I was in Saskatchewan. I wasn't able to attend, but I understand a number of councillors were down there to watch April Wine perform, and that it was a big event, a big successful event. And speaking of Saskatoon, myself and Councillor Morocco, along with a number of regional councillors, were in Saskatoon Saskatchewan at the FCM, which is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which are all the mayors and city councils from across Canada. We are there for two reasons. One, gathering information. Two, the fact that we're going to host that conference in 2 years. We have an organizational committee, and we're gathering information on the best way to organize this committee. And I can tell you, next year, since it's in Vancouver, the following year it's going to be here in Niagara Falls, and they're very, very, very excited to bring the conference here. Matter of fact, I get to bring greetings to conferences every day, including one today, and they, without exception, have record attendance. It doesn't matter where it was last year, if it was out west, if it was in the U.S., out east. They always break the record attendances when it happens here in Niagara Falls, which we're very, very proud of. Speaking of FCM, on our way back, we had a stopover for 2 hours in Calgary, which was great. The perfect timing for Mike Strange, Niagara Falls, former Olympic boxer, 3-time, was running across Canada. From Thunder Bay to Victoria. Councillor Peter Angelo met up with him and did a day's run as well. We saw the YouTube video at our last council meeting. We met up with myself, Councillor Morocco, Councillor Timms of St. Catharines Regional Council. We met up with him and were able to give him some donations, some encouragement, had a few laughs. He's lost about 25 pounds. He tells us he's lost his bum. It's no longer there, but he's gained a six-pack in the process. His spirits were good. He said it's very, very difficult to run into a town and to not have anybody waiting for you. And he says he really appreciates all the comments on Twitter, Facebook, all the emails. It's what motivates him when he reads them at night. Every day, running a marathon every day for several months can really take the steam out of you, especially with the shin splints. He said he appreciates all the shoes. Councillor Peter Angelo, you bought some shoes for him, 4 pair of shoes. He said it really means a lot to him, more than anything, just morally, just gives him the kick in his step that he needs. As well, city employee Jim Thorpe will be going out there to meet him in Kamloops. He's going tomorrow. So if anyone has anything you want delivered tomorrow, this would be your last-minute ditch effort if you want anything delivered to Mike. And it's funny, in retrospect, we said he should have ran from Victoria to Niagara Falls. It might have been a little bit easier. Councillor Peter Angelo.
Your Worship, just on that note, since you're mentioning city employees, there was a city employee that went out there last weekend, Dave McLean, and he ran 40 kilometers with them as well on the Sunday.
You know, that's great. I mean, it's just to go show the support for a great event that's taking place. Really impressive. Our hats off to Mike and all the supporters that are there supporting him. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, I should mention as well, I'm not sure if anyone recognizes the name McLean, but Council did support a motion to, charge the tournament for to raise funds for John McLean at a lesser rate. John McLean is a young boy from our city who died at the age of 27 from cancer, so that's why David went out to run.
Well, and cancer touches all of our lives, and it's a great opportunity to draw awareness and to give back. And he likes to stress he's not finishing off Terry Fox's run. He said that run will never be finished until a cure for cancer is found. He's doing a separate run to draw awareness specifically for children suffering with cancer. Mayor's Disability Advisory Committee had their annual barbecue at City Hall. We appreciate that. I want to thank Councillor Gates for the ribbon cutting for the Underground Infrastructure Research Conference that took place. Appreciate you representing the council there as well. We had a meet and greet with the students from Attawapiskat, which is a place up north where we have a number of people that live there in dire conditions. And Wes Prankard, a young boy here in Niagara Falls, has been living in a tent himself to raise money. Well, what he did this time, he brought a bunch of grade 8s down here to experience Niagara Falls, and they went and ate at Planet Hollywood, and we brought them some pins and pens from the city of Niagara Falls as well. For a lot of these kids, they've never left their village. And to be here in Niagara Falls was a dream of a lifetime, as we were able to reach out to some of our native friends, and so we welcome them to the city. Along with fellow councillors, we were able to attend Pathstone Foundation Hope Awards, where we were presented a special award to Maurice Gome, I can't remember how you say it, Gome, and got to meet our hero, a lot of us, Henry Winkler, the Fonz, and we want to thank, we had Councillor Iannone was there, and Councillor Carriol for sponsoring a table so that a number of us could be at the event. What a great event, and to get to meet Henry Winkler, and I have to tell you, he was exactly what you would have expected him to be. He was humble, down to earth, and considering, wasn't that long ago, he was the #1 performer on the planet And Mr. Winkler is just as charming and just as interesting, and it wasn't until he was 31 years of age that they discovered he was dyslexic. He was always told that he was dumb and he couldn't learn, he was lazy, and he said, I never felt that way. I always felt like I was smart, but I just couldn't. He goes, I tried, and finally, until he was 31, he realized he was dyslexic. So it was great to have him at Pathstone Foundation Hope Awards, and it was a great event. Comic-Con took place this weekend at the Convention Center, and it was like my fantasy weekend. I thought it wasn't going to get any better after meeting the Fonz. And no, it got better. Got to meet Burt Ward, who was the Boy Wonder of the original Batman and Robin series. Got to meet Brett, the Hitman Hart. Doing the video, I'm going to tell you about that in a second. There's another part to that story. Robert Picardo, who is the holodeck doctor on Star Trek Voyager. And yes, I'm a science fiction geek, and I love that kind of stuff. So got to meet all these people, and it was a real exciting night. And I do want to mention, later that night at the Gale Center, there was an event. Everyone should be aware of this. As we were introducing Brett, the Hitman Hart, the best there is, the best there ever was, and the best there's ever going to be, I was making him an honorary citizen of the city of Niagara Falls. I just finished pinning him, and I was about to take the chain of office to put it on him to make him mayor for the night, and just as I was doing that, a bunch of rebel rogue tag team wrestlers came bursting out of the scenes with a microphone, and they busted onto the stage, and they took the chain away, and they said, you're not the mayor, I'm the mayor tonight, and they wouldn't allow us to put it on Bret Hart. So what's happening now, there's going to be a grudge match taking place later this summer to get our chain of office officially back, and it's going to be called a Midsummer's Night Mayor. Mayor, M-A-Y-O-R. So that will take place. Watch for it this summer, and hopefully we will get that back. And watch for this wrestling match, their event for next year. Wait till you hear the names that they're lining up.
Did you watch the video?
I didn't watch the video. How was it? Did you watch it? Pardon me?
When you got roughed up.
I got roughed up a little bit by these guys, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah. Moving on. We had the great Niagara Portage Adventure of 1812, and we want to thank Councillor Gates for representing us there, along with some of our senior staff, including our CAO. Councillor Gates, I understand they had a couple of defibrillators on standby for you. Is that true?
Absolutely true.
And throwback to the way we did get along at one time, before we had roads and whatnot, they portaged from the upper river to the lower river, and Councillor Peter Angelo would like to comment on the portage event.
Yeah, Your Worship, I guess the only thing I want to say is I heard Mr. Todd was at the front, and our other staff, Clark, was at the back, and he didn't even have to hold the canoe on his shoulders.
Yeah, since they're both well over 6 feet, and Councillor Gates is well under, that worked out. I heard you're hanging from it, and they were carrying you at one point. Is that true? Kicking your feet? Yeah, like Yosemite Sam. That's great.
Gotta have fun, man.
Yeah, you gotta have fun. And a lot of money was raised, Councillor Gates, I understand.
They did a good job.
Okay, that's great, which will go toward our new historic Niagara Falls History Museum, which will be opening up next month. Now, Niagara Falls Lions Club celebrated their 90th charter anniversary, and I was there on Saturday night as well for that event. And, of course, our Project Share, Women Who Care for Project Share, are having their big event at Oaks Park. It concluded tonight. A number of us were there, and I did spend some time in the dunk tank on Sunday afternoon, and I showed up in a shirt and tie, and they said, let's do some before and after pictures, and I taunted the crowd, and I said, well, why? The after picture is going to look just like the before picture, because no one's going to dunk me. And I did a lot of yawning and looking at my watch, and of course, Councillor Inoni spent about $200 to dunk me, and she did it several times.
Look, it was the third ball, let's be honest. Third ball.
A good arm from 2 feet away, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was good arm.
He's not mine.
No, she was pretty close. She threatened if she missed, she was going to push it anyway. So I was going down, and I was pretty much a prune by the end of it, but the good news is we raised more money for the local food bank.
How many times did I dunk you?
I lost track. 6 times, that's right, 6 times. It was a good day, and you know, that water was 2 days old. I don't even want to tell you what it looked like by the time I got in there, but it was warm. Yeah, well, that's too bad. We couldn't see that. Moving on, we had the grand opening of Brink Studios, which is a digital FX movie commercial studio in town, and I want to thank Councillor Gates, Thompson, and Iannoni for joining us there. It was a great event put on by JP Marketing, and look forward to some incredible homegrown talent. So these students graduating from Brock and Niagara College in the film industry will have a place where they can work, and they're making world-class commercials and productions with their green studio. It's very exciting, and you want to participate and have a look at Brink Studio. Also today we had the Canadian Gaming Summit. Took place at the Convention Center, and they said it was the biggest attendance they've ever had. And it travels all across the country. So we had all the heads of Ontario Lottery and Gaming and all the gaming officials from all over North America in town. They're still in town right now, and it was an impressive event. And as well, today we raised the flag for the Philippine Independence Day. So we did that today in front of City Hall. Last thing I do want to mention is upcoming. Mr. Walenda, if anybody hasn't already heard, he's going to be walking on a wire across Niagara Falls this Friday. This is going to be a very big event. I was down there earlier today, and our chief is right. All the international media, already there's 70 accredited, registered media from all over the world, already buzzing around, filming this, that, and everything, sending feeds all over the world. This event is so big. Every major network in the world is running this every half hour. And as they were down there, they were talking about how big this is going to be. It'll be the biggest event on the planet on Friday. They're expecting between 400 million and 1 billion viewers. One of the Chinese networks have over 1 billion subscribers for state television. It's going to be absolutely big. Our advice to you is get down there early and come up with a good plan. Don't plan that you're going to drive down Clifton Hill and go park by the falls. That's not going to happen. We've got some great transportation strategies, and I'm going to ask Mr. Stewart to maybe just give us a quick overview of what they are. And just before he does, I also want to mention that GO Train through Metrolinx has added on a special tightrope train for this Friday. It leaves the GTA at 3:30. It arrives here at 5:30. And anyone along the Golden Horseshoe can jump on, whether it's Burlington, Hamilton, St. Catharines. It's the best way to get into the city, then jump on our shuttle system and get to the falls. But plan to park a little bit away from the action and walk down. It's going to be absolutely exciting. And if you plan on getting around, leave yourself lots of time. And maybe, Mr. Stewart, you can help us understand what you have in plan for local residents. They want to get down there, and they don't want to worry about parking and all that kind of issue. What do you suggest?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Niagara Falls Transit's making, stand up.
Yeah, if you don't mind, yeah.
Okay, Niagara Falls Transit's making every effort to have as many buses and personnel available on Friday evening to make it easy to get down to the event. We know there's going to be a lot of residents, a lot of people coming in from the GTA on the GO Train, as you alluded to. That GO Train holds 1,600 people, so we're going to have a lot of buses waiting for that arrival at roughly 5:30 in front of the Via GO Train station. We've got 3 municipal lots that we're using. We've got the old Walmart site at the end of Morrison Street across from Optimist. We've got the Zellers Kitty Corner on the other side, the east side of the Zellers site on Morrison. We've also got the former Casino Associates site over there on Montrose Road that we're utilizing. So buses will be starting at 5:30. The return fare is going to be $5. You pay $5 when you board the bus, and then the return fare is basically on the honor system. We're just going to load up down by the base of Clifton Hill with all these buses and get them back to the lots. There's designated stopping spots depending on the park and ride you got to, and you'd go back to that location where you got dropped off, and we'll whisk you back to your car park as quickly as possible. So again, it's $5. It's starting at 5:30. And we'll get you into the action and out of the action as quickly as possible. So we encourage you to leave your cars at home or leave them at those 3 park and ride lots and utilize your public transit system. It'll be the best way to go.
That's great. That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. I know there's been a lot of work with our staff here planning the transportation routes and backup plans in case the police do close roadways down, in case the MTO does close down some highways. You want to have alternative plans. Leave yourself lots of time, and you don't want to miss it. This is going to be the biggest event in Niagara Falls. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be historic and exciting. And last up, we just want to remind everybody, Canada Day is going to take place Sunday, July the 1st at Optimist Park. It will be our last parade out of Optimist Park. We want to make sure everybody's going to be down there. The parade starts at 10 a.m. and as usual, we're expecting tens of thousands of people down there. We're expecting good weather. It always seems to be good weather that day, and we're looking forward to real exciting final Canada Day with our Optimists. And we're going to have some special acknowledgments for the Optimists that day, as they've been hosting this parade for a long, long time. So thank you for indulging me through all of our announcements and awards. And I know it's your favorite part of the meeting, but it is over now. Moving on to communications and comments of the city clerk. We have 3 items. First off, we have the Director of Transportation Services recommending proposed fare adjustments be deferred until the route enhancements are programmed into the budget cycle. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Carrio. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Item 2, Serbian Club requesting July 10th be proclaimed Nikola Tesla Day in the city of Niagara Falls. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Maves. All those in favor? It's unanimous. And the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 51 requesting a grant equal to the costs associated with the road closure for the annual 40 and 8 pilgrimage. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional items for Council's consideration?
Yes, Your Worship. One item, the Parks Commission's fireworks schedule for the 2012 year. The fireworks, as you know, are on Friday evenings and on assorted holidays at 10 o'clock p.m. The one minor change is on Friday in conjunction, obviously, with the Lenda Walk. The fireworks will probably go off closer to 11 o'clock. So asking for Council's approval based on your fireworks bylaw.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. All those in favor? Thank you very much. So it's a good idea. They're not going to shoot them off while he's walking. Is that right? Okay, good. Councillor Pietrangelo?
Your Worship, just as an additional communication, I think that we had a page in here that was a parking issue that was brought forward.
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to take that up now or...
Through your worship, that's from Mr. Goyle. It's there for your information if you want to. There is a response from staff on the other side. If you want any further clarification, I guess you can ask or refer it to staff for a report. It's up to Council's direction.
Yes. Well, Councillor Pietrangelo first. Did you want to address that, and then Councillor Thompson?
Your Worship, yeah. I mean, I think that the request here is for a loading permit for 15 minutes. I personally don't have an objection to trying it out for the season and seeing how it goes. I'll listen to what other councillors have to say, and I know that Mr. Royal's here.
Do you want to make that into a motion?
Sure, I'll make that a motion, Your Worship.
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I asked Mr. Goyle to send a request in. He was being frustrated by not having the opportunity to pick up and drop off. I don't know why we don't have a little more sympathy for people who have businesses in a busy area like that. They have to have the opportunity to pick up and drop off. So, what was the motion?
Well, Your Worship, I'd like to try it out for a year and see how it goes, and then we can have a report back to staff on whether or not it's working well.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, because last time figured it out.
No, I mean, but he's suggesting a...
Do you want to come to the mic, Mr. Goyle? Thank you. Welcome.
At some point, Your Worship, we have to support the business that we have. So.
Yeah, like right now it is 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. A delivery and everything comes later. And so, excuse me for I can't speak. So 15 minutes is more reasonable rather than fixing a time that, in and out. There's nobody's parked there or anything. I have to.
So you can't be the only one that's...
No, I know that. Frito-Lay truck, Coke truck, anybody comes, and you can't force them to come between the 6 and 9.
I don't know why we don't have a little more common sense with respect to this. I work in the Fallsview district, and we have tourism buses that are being harassed and threatened by our parking authority in the middle of the season. What else are they going to do? I think there has to be a message sent that we're in the tourist business up there, and that they have to realize when a bus pulls up, he's picking up and dropping off people, as long as they're not sitting there running it for an hour at a time, and they're being expeditious about doing their business. I think we have to be sympathetic to that, and also with the loading and unloading. So I hope that message is sent through directly to the CAO. Got it? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to allow 15-minute parking on Fallsview in front of Mr. Goyle's business. We're going to try it for this season, and we'll have a staff report at the end to see how that it worked out. Are there any questions to the motion? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Goyle. Super. Now, can we find out now how soon is this, maybe from staff, how soon are we going to be able to enact this? Because we're in the season now. Maybe I can get some direction from staff when Mr. Goyle can expect to start being able to park out front. 8:20. Pardon me? 8:20. At 8:20.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Dren's not here tonight, but we'll certainly pass it along to him first thing in the morning. I'm not sure how long it takes, but I'm sure they'll get on it quickly.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pietrangelo. Moving on, we have ratification of Committee of the Whole recommendations. Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The following items are to be ratified from tonight's meeting of the Committee of the Whole. That the Committee of the Whole minutes of May 29, 2012 be approved. And under reports that staff investigate sound mitigation for the Portage Road speed hump. Under CD 2012-06, requests related to the Niagara Falls Armory. That Council adhere to its 2010 decision requiring a review of the long-term viability of the Niagara Military Museum at the end of their lease, March 31st, 2013, and that the unsolicited proposal by the Niagara Veterans Association be received by Council and staff work with the two organizations to be directed to come up with an amicable arrangement. Under new business, that Council supports the Main and Ferry BIA sign request to the region, and I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Iannone, second by Councillor Maves. Any discussion to the motion? No? All those in favor? Okay, it's passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any will? Does anybody want any specific one discussed? Okay, we got moved the consent agenda by Councillor Iannone, second by Councillor Carrio. Yes, Councillor Wing?
RC 2012-10, the Arts and Culture Wall of Fame induction criteria. I just wanted to perhaps raise a couple of concerns about the present draft.
Okay, Councillor Wing. Councillor Pietrangelo?
Your Worship, I don't want to pull one. I just want to give staff some kudos for MW 2012-11 dealing with the sewer lateral maintenance service and customer service improvements. After reading the report, it was quite clear that that staff are listening to what the residents are telling them, and they're making changes based on that. And it'd be nice to see city staff do the work rather than contracting it out. So, appreciate the report.
Well done by senior staff and by the union coming together and giving better customer service. I think that's a win-win, and thank you for drawing attention to that. Councillor Gates?
Yeah, just I'm going to make some comments now. I guess I don't have to pull it on the RNC 212-16, the Clarkson Cup. I'd like to congratulate the Recreation Committee. We raised this a couple weeks ago, and it looks like we're going to get that done. It's hopefully will happen here again in Niagara Falls. And I'd also like to compliment Ralph Beaumont, who is having a tournament that weekend and has been a little flexible. I went and talked to him, and he's been flexible on how the tournament's going to go to try to accommodate this. I think it's a very good event. And just one question on the sports tourism. Is there any dollars available for the Clarkson Cup in that?
Smoldenauer?
Yes. Through to the Mayor. In 2012, the Clarkson Cup did receive $5,000 funding from the sports tourism. So the plan would be for 2013 that we would also take $5,000 from the sport tourism program for the Clarkson Cup.
Thank you.
Councillor Gates?
Yes, great.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. All right, then we have a motion to receive the remainder of the consent agenda. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. So next, Councillor Wing, RC 2012-10, Arts and Culture Wall of Fame induction criteria.
I know Mrs. Moldenhauer has been working with the committee in question and trying to harmonize it with the Sports Wall of Fame induction criteria. There's been a lot of tweaking. I just had concerns about a couple of remaining items. In the policy itself, under procedures, page 2 of 3, conduct of Wall of Fame meetings, item 4, committee members will state a conflict of interest in advance of the meeting and remove themselves from the discussion and voting for the particular nominee in question. I was just concerned about the inclusion of the last bit about for the particular nominee in question. I thought maybe they should just abstain from the voting and discussion altogether in case it's more for the optics of the committee than anything else. We don't want to have anybody's objectivity on other nominees being called into question. So I was just concerned about the inclusion of those words. And at the top of the next page, with automatic induction, a minimum of 2 spots per year will be reserved for those qualifying for automatic induction. I don't really see a need for reserving any spots. Automatic means just that, automatic. If someone has met the minimum criteria and been recognized with a national or international award or some sort of national or international acclaim, then just cut it at they'll be eligible for automatic induction, no questions asked, or there's no need to reserve any spots. So my recommendation would be to strike that thing about no minimum of 2 spots per year. So I'll move this the adoption with those 2 changes.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Wing, second by Councillor Iannoni. Is there any discussion to the Arts and Culture Wall of Fame induction criteria? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Well done. Thank you. Okay, moving on to property matters. Now I would ask, is there anyone here who has an interest respecting the property matter of 2012-40, where we're looking to have a bylaw to execute a lease between the Corporation of the City of Niagara Falls and Marineland of Canada for a specified area? Okay, if you just raise your hands for now, and then we will get, so we've got, okay, of course, yes, Mr. Richardson. All right, so we do have a few people. Okay, what, Mr. Clerk, maybe what order do you suggest? We first those, like we do in our procedural or in our planning items, that we'll ask first those other than the applicant, maybe to step forward. Okay, so maybe if we can start with you, sir, if you could step up and please state your name and your address for the clerk so we can take note of it.
My name is Brian Calvert of Memorial Drive in Fenwick.
Okay, Calvert?
C-A-L-V-E-R-T.
V-E-R-T, okay. Thank you.
When I was on the Niagara Region Bicycle Committee, we wanted bicycle lines on the new Thorold Stone Road Bridge over the Queen Elizabeth Way, but the road allowance width was a serious limitation. The gravel shoulder in front of Marineland ought to be paved to improve bicycle safety. If a vehicle gets a flat tire where there's no shoulder, they must do the repair in the middle of the road. The allowance beside the road is needed during road repairs. Sidewalks are also important for pedestrian safety. However, the announcement for this meeting calls this land surplus. Were you hoping that we wouldn't notice? Any politician who supports this fraud will be remembered in the next election. Forgive us our trespasses, what hypocrites! This is an attempt to hide the fact that some people do not love Marineland using the trespass laws. If you suppress peaceful protest on public land, that becomes a human rights issue which will only attract more protesters, including me. I have never protested at Marineland yet, but now I'm interested. Think of all the pot bangers in Quebec who are not students. Do you think you can privatize all the sidewalks? Because the protests will continue somewhere.
Thank you, sir. All I would ask, we know everyone's emotional about it. We just try to keep decorum in the chamber and not clap or boo or, just appreciate that, please. If you please state your name and your address, please.
Jillian Ditilio.
Tilio?
Ditilio. D-I-T-I-L-L-I-O.
Okay, and your address?
St. Catharines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Jillian Ditilio, and I've been protesting at Marineland for over 20 years. I'm actually 38, I know. I could use all of my time in front of you today to point out that this current attempt by Mr. Holder to silence his critics is just one more bully tactic in a long history of aggressive ploys to squash democratic freedoms. In 2003, Marineland served Niagara Action for Animals, a local non-profit organization of volunteers, with notice of a libel suit claiming $250,000 in punitive damages and seeking an injunction that would stop NAPA from publishing statements against Marineland. In 2011, Mr. Holder had his lawyers send a cease and desist order to Dylan Powell of Marineland Animal Defense, threatening to sue him for trademark infringement. Mr. Holder has also been known to be physically threatening. In 1996, it was reported that he hit a peaceful protester with his car and then left the scene. In 2011, he was videotaped threatening to do the same to Dylan Powell. There are also reports of Mr. Holder harassing and threatening the residents of Green Oaks Trailer Park, even though the 47 families were already being forced out. Tragically, this resulted in the suicide of Paul Millard.
Folks, if we could just keep it to this topic, I appreciate what
I
we're
could also
referring
spend
to.
all of my time with you today to illustrate that John Holder and Marineland already have a tarnished international reputation. For instance, the U.S. publication No Compromise has called the Marineland the worst marine mammal theme park in North America, and the Journal of the Cetacean Society International has deemed Marineland an embarrassment. When David Suzuki came to support NAPA in their fight against the lawsuit, he spoke at Sir Winston Churchill High School and called John Holder and Marineland a thug in our neighborhood. Allowing John Holder to control the land in front of Marineland, which essentially squashes our right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression on that plot of land, will absolutely bring about more negative international attention to Marineland and, of course, to Niagara Falls. Every member of the public is affected by this decision, as it will limit our democratic rights under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But I recognize I'm not speaking before the Supreme Court of Canada today. You are a municipal government, and therefore I will focus on the logistics and challenges that this will bring about locally. First of all, I would ask the city to allow for a review or notice to the public regarding the specific maintenance, repair, and monitoring of all the public utilities over, through, or under the said piece of land, and the agreement or lack thereof that deals with this in the contract to lease.
Could you repeat that part? So you want a maintenance, repair, you're asking in?
Yes, I'm asking for a public notice on the specific maintenance, repair, and monitoring of all of the public utilities that are on this land. Basically, the public needs to be assured that these services will continue unaffected by the land transfer and be clear as to who is responsible for these should a lease be allowed. Is there an agreement already in place? Is there an agreement that the city will look after this? Is there an independent reputable contractor assigned to this by John Holder if he is given the lease? Basically, what are the logistics for handling the hydro poles and other utilities as well as the bus stop in front of Marineland? What if Mr. Holder decides to allow tour buses to use the public bus stop? Or what if he allows parking overflow on the boulevard along Portage Road? Will this cause traffic issues? The public deserves more time and information before a decision should be made regarding this piece of municipal land. My second concern is that this will set a precedent for other business owners to lease land in front of their place of business, which will mean a loss of public control over what is done with these lands. Will other businesses want to allow buses to pull up onto what is currently municipal property? Will they want extra land for parking overflows? This is a slippery slope, and again, I implore you to take more time with this decision. Public land should remain public. Restricting the public access to this strip of road will create logistical problems with the public utilities that are already situated there. It will create a precedent for other businesses to do the same. And most importantly, it will squash the rights of the public to peacefully assemble and freely express ourselves as protected in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This will most definitely bring about a negative international attention to Marineland and Niagara Falls. This will not stop us from protesting, but will give us one more issue to bring to the international stage, which will most certainly garner some serious support for our cause. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have someone else who'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am. And again, just to remind everyone, we just prefer, if you can, not repeat an issue that's already been addressed. We are going to deal with the issues. Can you state your name and your address, please?
Sure, it's Lauren Corman.
Corman?
Corman, C-O-R-M-A-N.
Okay.
St. Catharines.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for giving me a bit of your time tonight. As I mentioned, my name is Lauren Corman. I'm a professor at Brock University. I'm used to lecturing. This is new for me. So, among other courses, I teach classes entitled Animals in the Law and Animals in Human Society. In both of these classes, we address Marineland as a case study from a series of socio-legal perspectives. Students are extremely interested in this content, often offering first-hand accounts of either attending or working at the park. Many are as equally dismayed by the captivity and treatment of animals as they are heartened by the democratic engagements of local advocates. It is truly saddening that another chapter of this case study might be the further marginalization of public dialogue on the ethics of wild animal confinement. Regardless of one's position, civil discourse regarding matters of environmental and animal concern is crucial to the cultivation of vibrant citizenship. What message is sent when critique is increasingly made peripheral and pushed to the sidelines? The case of Marineland is in jeopardy of being seen not only as a matter of environmental and animal concern, but also as a failure of municipal government to protect public critique of society, including its industrial and economic functioning. Rather than a minor point, the symbolic weight of a decision to permit the private lease of public land, which will in effect hinder protests, strikes at the very heart of democracy, the very institution that educators and politicians should hold dear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Corman? Okay, we have someone else who would like to speak. I thought I saw some hands on this side before. Yes, sir? Could you please state your name and your address?
My name is Brian Topolinsky, and I'm from Niagara Falls.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to be as professional as everybody else speaking here. I just kind of got wind of this Sunday, and just sitting here, I've been kind of writing some notes. So my understanding of this is that it is a license that, that in the beginning, Marineland has requested use of the property in between the road allowance, basically. And my understanding is that initially when it was first presented to the city, it was, somebody mentioned something about a license is required, and that was it. However, for some unknown reason, he needs more than the license. He actually needs a lease. And, I mean, I like to think that everybody in this room is, I mean, you represent our city. You are brilliant people. You are talented people. You are very smart people. But anybody looking at this can call it for what it's worth. This is to silence the people. This is all it is. I mean, does anybody, I have two questions for the city. Has anybody in the past ever not required a license but actually got a lease? Is this the first time? Is this going to be a precedent setting?
Okay.
So
We'll get an answer for you.
Okay, that is one of my questions.
And what was the other question?
The next question I have is, I forgot. Okay. Hold on. Has there been any, if this land that he requires, if he requires a lease, then has anybody seen any blueprints, any architectural drawings of anything, type of landscaping that he wants to put on this property, that he so-called wants to put on the property, that requires a lease? Has anybody seen anything? Maybe he'll be presenting it tonight, I'm not sure. I mean, I can't believe that this has even gone this far. This is a precedent setting. And, I mean, you have, what's going to stop any other businesses, if you allow this to happen, what's going to stop any other business in this city from wanting to lease the front of their property if they have labor disputes, if they have workers that want to strike or in a strike position, and all of a sudden they want to lease their property to keep them off the property? I mean, you're starting a whole new can of worms here. And I can't believe that it's even gotten this far.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get you answers to your questions. So the first question, and I don't know who wants to answer this, have we before entered lease arrangements with businesses in the city for part of their property? So I don't know who could address that question first.
Sidewalk cafes.
Oh, sidewalk cafes? Okay, well, I don't know, who's the most appropriate person, Mr. Todd? Mr. Beeman? All right, Mr. Beeman, maybe you could help us out on that?
Well, sidewalk cafes were mentioned, and yes, we do rent pieces of sidewalk in front of properties and assign those.
So we've done that in the past.
Yeah. This a little different in that it's not a sidewalk cafe, but it's similar to a sidewalk cafe.
Same kind of and then Mr. Clerk.
There's numerous encroachment agreements between the city and private businesses, residents.
Okay, so it's not a new thing to have a lease with a private property owner.
However, it is different in effect that, I mean, you can lease a sidewalk cafe, but you're not leasing from the sidewalk right to the actual road.
Yeah.
Roadway. You're leasing a portion of it, is what we're doing. In this particular case, we're giving him everything.
Yes.
Right to the road. Okay.
Yes.
So it is a little different.
Yes.
Okay.
And then your second question about blueprints, I don't know if we're going to hear that from the applicant afterward.
They have been.
They have, okay. So there are blueprints, and we're going to hear more about that when the applicant comes up.
Okay, and the blueprints are the ones that are on the actual memo that we've seen? Is that what we're basing it on? Okay, additional ones?
Yeah, and once we have Mr. Richardson up here, I'm sure he'll enlighten us a little more in that regard.
Another question I have is Stanley Avenue is a regional road. Do they have to be involved in this at all, the Niagara region?
Can we get Mr. Clerk?
There was actually two requests that came to council on April 24th, the one related to Portage Road, which is the city road, and one related to Stanley Avenue, which is regional road, as you point out. What I'm going to be doing is, after whatever council's wish is tonight, then I'll be sending information on to the region with regard to the regional request.
Okay. I guess, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm trying to say here is I mean, we all know. I mean, you could paint it for what it's worth. You can say that it's landscape, and I mean, they can present a beautiful little presentation here, but we all know what it's there for. We know that it is to stifle the freedom of speech. And I mean, we're all brilliant. And I mean, if you guys, anybody supports this, in my opinion, then you're supporting exactly what Mr. Holler is trying to do, and that's stifle the freedom of people's speech.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Pardon me? Well, yeah, let's find out first. Do we have anyone else that would like, anyone up that hasn't spoken?
I was wondering if after the presentation we would be permitted to ask questions.
No, this is the format that we have here. You can put all your questions forward, then we bring up the applicant, and then they answer the questions. And then the council can ask the questions, and then we make the decision. Well, because it's not a courtroom, that's why it's not that kind of a debate.
I thought there would be a question period after.
Yeah, there's not, but if you do have one other question you want to ask, let's first see if there's anyone else that would like to address the council tonight on this issue. This will be your last chance, so if you don't do it now, you're not going to be able to come up afterwards. So, okay, yes, did you want?
I heard, no, it is kind of, it feels that it is unfair because he might present something that maybe we might want.
Well, see, it's because it's not a debate.
Right.
This is council making a decision based on the information that we're going to have. So this is the way. So if you have any other questions, so if Ms. DiTilio, did you want to come forward and ask your question and then try to address it?
Yeah, I just have a question. I know that his claim is that this is about landscaping, and I'm just wondering how this is different than the trees he already has planted on that property. And if he wants to landscape, I'm not sure that I understand why he can't just go ahead and landscape with the title and not the lease. This is my question. Because I know he planted the trees all along that boulevard, so he's already done that. Why then not allow him to landscape on this space without having to give him the lease?
Okay. Okay, we'll ask the applicant when they come up here.
Okay.
We'll find out the answer to that question.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks very much. Yes, sir?
Planning to landscape...
Can you just come to the mic, sir?
Is he planning to landscape the gravel shoulder of the road? Why would that be included in the map?
Okay, well, we'll get the answers. Thank you. Okay, so everyone's had a chance to ask the questions. We got a lot of questions. And staff, yes, Councillor Thompson, before we bring up the applicant, rather.
Yeah, I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding with respect to this situation. We're not talking about selling any land. I was inundated with emails about the sale of property. We're not talking about the sale of property. We're talking about right at the entrance of marine land, and they're talking about taking rights away. There's a whole kilometer of frontage that isn't affected. This is strictly at the entrance. And why are we doing that? Not for landscaping. It's because of people who are standing there steady, trying to stop the cars. The cars are trying to come in, and once we know there's a liability for an accident as a municipality, we have a responsibility to react. After several meetings, Mr. Holler came in and said, what about if I leased that and landscaped it and made it look appropriate? It's not going to affect any of the protesters, and it's going to create a safety situation for Mr. Holler, for the protesters, and for anybody in a car coming in there. So, you know, this thing is, some of these comments I hear are really overstated, because we're trying to just control. If we were talking about Zellers and the same situation, I'd be standing up here saying the same thing. We're not talking about the frontage. We're not talking about taking anybody's rights or freedoms away. We're talking about some safety at the entrance. We have the police out there every weekend. What the cost of that is. We have our bylaw enforcement people out there every weekend, paying them simply because everybody's concerned about somebody going out on the road, another car smashing into it, and one of the injuries. It was mentioned here that Mr. Holler had hit somebody. Well, that's one side of the story. So anyway, I think that this is blown right out of proportion, and I'd like to hear Mr. Richardson, and we'll go from there.
Yes. Did you have a question, ma'am? Because we don't want this to be. We're not going to debate.
This is a council meeting.
No, exactly. That's right. So if you have another question, if not, we're just going to hear from the applicant. We're going to let him make his presentation.
And then we don't get to speak after now.
No, it's not going to be a debate, but council will be able to ask all the questions they want based on everything that you've put forward, and we'll get answers to all the questions.
Ask some questions about the safety concerns that this gentleman is referring to, because there have been.
We'll deal with it. Okay, we're going to, now, Mr. Richardson. Okay, everybody, please. Miss Castillo and Mr. Councillor Thompson, come on. I know, but here's what we're going to do now. Next, excuse me. I really want to maintain decorum. Please help me to do this. I know you're all emotional and passionate about what you believe in. We just want to deal with the facts right now. So now I'd like to, we're finished now this part. We're finished. We've asked our questions. If it's a question, sir. If it's a new question, you can ask it.
Based on Mr.
Thompson.
Based on what he said and his concerns, and you know what, that's fair, but if that's all they're concerned about, then why do they need from the entrance all the way down to the very beginning? They would only need the very part.
That's all there is. That's all there is. That's
Yes.
all there is.
Councillor Morocco.
Yeah, to that point, Your Worship, this has really been blown out of proportion. I think that we really need to, it's a small portion. We've never agreed, the lease is a small portion, it's not the entire stretch of Portage or Stanley there. That's open, and it's not to stop the right of speech. We've never intended that, and neither did Mr. Holler when he came to actually put the application for the lease of that small part of the front. So I think we need to have that area identified, Dean, if you could possibly, or through the mayor to the staff, just to make clarification. I've had hundreds of emails as well saying that we sold the land.
As Councillor Thompson indicated, there's about 1.3 kilometers of frontage along Portage Road. And this request, my understanding, is between about 250 and 400 meters of that frontage. So, and if you've gone out to the Marineland protests, and you know this is the fact, most of the protesters are sort of located in a very sequential fashion along Portage Road, roughly parallel to the front gate, like the ticket, kiosk you go into, and on the other side of the street is the bus stop right near Burning Hills Road, which goes down into Duff. So that's where the majority of the protesters are, and there's nothing stopping them from going back to that land. There's no lease on that land, so we assume that during their regular protests, they'll be where they've always been. This is a, like I said, between 250 meters, 400 meters is my understanding. Mr. Richardson can correct me. Right across from Upper Rapids Drive, where the cars pull in to go to Marineland. And when the events take place, there's usually a couple of protesters that are there, and they're handing out literature as cars come in. Some cars stop, some cars don't. There's also Marineland staff there, so as Councillor Thompson alluded to, there is potential for accidents.
Okay, next up, thank you, Councillor Morocco. Any other council staff have any councillors at this point have any question? Okay. What we're going to do now, sir, we're going to move on now. We're going to move on. Yeah, we gave you your chance, so I'm going to move on now. Mr. Richardson, would you please come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Tom Richardson. I'm a senior partner in the law firm of Sullivan Manny in St. Catharines. I appear here this evening with my partner, Tom Wall. We're both partners in the law firm, and we act for Marineland. Mr. Wall is the commercial lawyer who's been addressing the terms of the lease. I'll come back to that in a moment. I have a confession to make, and that is that I'm not computer literate, so I can't use PowerPoint, which is probably to my benefit because most times I see it fails when I come to a council meeting anyway. So what I brought along is, I'm sorry, yes, other council. What I brought along tonight are hard copies. I'm going to ask, there's 2 copies of each. If you could put these up where you share your screens, and I have a set for you as well, Mr. Mayor. It's comprised of a small aerial photograph and the landscape plan that everyone has been seeking. Thanks, thank you. Now, if I could start by saying this. This is not a sale. This is a proposed lease. It is a lease for 3 years with a proviso for renewal at the option of either party. And it is for the purposes of beautification. Now, if I could respond to a couple of comments that have been made in the submissions earlier this evening. This is, as your staff have told you, an entirely normal transaction. I can name at least 3. In addition to sidewalk cafes, in Port Dalhousie in St. Catharines, there is an ice cream stand which has a full patio, not on the sidewalk, but on a road allowance, which is leased to it by the City of St. Catharines. In West Lincoln, where I act, the municipality has leased a portion of a road allowance to provide a driveway into a private home back in. So the lease of roads or streets, untraveled portions, is an entirely normal circumstance. This is not at all unusual. The lease recommends itself here for the concern, the type of concern that was raised with respect to possible need for future use for bicycle lanes, as a for instance. Now, in the aerial photograph, you will see, as I know you all know, you drive by here regularly, if you are coming from McLeod Road and you approach this intersection, there is a left-hand turn lane, there is a through lane, and there is a right off lane into Marineland. My experience is the bicycle lane doesn't follow the off lane to the right. It passes between the through lane and the off lane with dotted lines, so they share the road. But if you should need the graveled portion, if that's needed for whatever purpose, your lease will allow you to come back and say, I'm sorry, but we need some of that land. We have to take it back. Are we going to have buses there? No, we're not. The proposed lease provides that my client will covenant, and I'm reading now, that he will use the property only for the purposes of decorative open space and in conjunction with the abutting property, and for the purposes of landscaping the property in accordance with a landscaping plan to be approved by the parties, which means, in this case, this council. Now, I've provided to you the large landscaping plan. This is the latest emanation. One of the presenters was correct. The dark green trees, which have no lines and little squares attached to them, those are the existing trees. Those are, in fact, trees which have been planted by Mr. Holler's company, as he has done on the road allowance all around his property, where he plants and maintains your road allowances. You do not pay for any of the decoration or maintenance on the road allowances. Marineland does. So, yes, that's true. Now, what's shown on here as well is the proposed landscaping to improve the entrance to Marineland and to address safety, which I'll come back to in a moment. How much land is proposed? If I could take you to the aerial photograph just for a moment, and you have to look very, very hard, you will see a silvery line that runs along parallel to the roadway. That's the property line. You can identify it if you look at the traffic island at the entrance exit to Marineland, and you will see that the line passes almost at the bottom tip of that traffic island. That's the extent of the property. So, in fact, if you compare that to the landscaping plan that I've provided to you, nearly all of that landscaped area is yours. That's the area which we're proposing be leased to Marineland. What is the extent of it? According to the draft reference plan which has been provided, and I believe this may have been provided to you previously, it's 35 feet deep, and if you'd like it in meters, it's 10.750 meters. Its length is 256 meters or 841 feet, and it extends from the right-hand side of the traffic island across the right-hand turning lane. There is no sidewalk on these lands. In fact, the reference plan as drafted specifically excludes the end of the sidewalk on the south side of the driveway. That's the extent of the lands proposed to be leased for beautification purposes. There is also, has been mentioned already by a member of council, the safety issue. And I invite you again to consider the aerial photograph that you have before you. What you have, and what I'm sure many of us have experienced, is this. You have an off lane for people, most of whom are not familiar with our area, are pulling off of Portage Road into a right-hand turning lane. They're slowing, they're looking for the way in, and there is an entrance way where they have to turn. And they're confronted from time to time by people who wish to express a view that's contrary to my client's view. That's not the purpose, by the way, of this meeting tonight. This is not a matter here of determining whether you agree with Marineland's practices or not. That's not an issue for this council ever. That's an issue for the federal regulations, and my client meets those regulations. What we're talking about is whether it's safe to have strangers pulling off a busy highway or busy roadway, coming into an entranceway, and being stopped or delayed by people who wish to express their views to them as they come in. So, yes, there is an issue of safety. If you look at the aerial photograph again and look at that property line, you will see that it passes currently very close to the entry road after you've made the turn off of Portage and you've come around the circle and you're going back north towards the parking lot. The property line is very close to our driveway. So what you have is an area that's being used for congregation between a busy highway with all of this tourist traffic coming off and then the tourist traffic circling around and coming back immediately past the protesters again. So yes, there is a safety issue as well, and that is of concern to us. So my client is not objecting to protesters. My client, to correct the figure that was given earlier, has 1.5 kilometers of frontage on Portage Road. As we've said, we're talking about 256 meters out of 1,500 meters. There's all sorts of room for protesters who wish to express their views. All we're trying to address is the entranceway as shown on the landscaping plan. So with respect, Mr. Mayor and members of council, I would request that you give favorable consideration to the request made by my client seeking to lease for a term of 3 years the area shown on the draft plan, reference plan, for the purpose only as described in the draft lease of landscaping. Not for buses, not for any other marine land use, simply for landscaping. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, is Mr. Wall going to speak too or no?
Only if there's questions about the lease that I wasn't able to answer.
Gotcha, okay. We've got Councillor Carriot, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you were describing the option, the renewal option, could you describe that again? Who can decide whether or not, does the city have the option of not renewing the option at the end of 3 years?
Yes, it does, sir. It's an option that's available to either party.
So the city, if they don't like the arrangement, at the end of the 3 years, we can terminate the agreement?
That's correct. And as I said earlier, if you need some or all of that land for other purposes at that time, you have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I don't have any further questions.
Well, are you getting ready to make... I just want to make sure that if there's any other questions for Mr. Richardson from council. I'm sorry? Mr. Beeman, did you have a comment?
Just one matter, Mr. Richardson, utilities.
Yes.
That is accommodated in the lease.
That's correct. My client is not taking on the utilities. I was somewhat surprised by the submission. We are not assuming any responsibility for the utilities. Those will continue to be the responsibility of the utilities that own them. So we're not interfering with your sewers or your water lines. We're not interfering with the hydro lines overhead. Those will continue to operate as they do right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from... Yes, Councillor Carriot.
Just further to that, then, we have unfettered access to those utilities even though the lease is in place?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions of council? Okay, so we're looking for a motion from council. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Iannone. Is there any discussion to the motion? Councillor Wing?
Yes, I won't support it. Mr. Richardson has talked about decorations on the road allowances being paid for by the private business. That happens all the time. I sit on a couple of BIAs and they pay for decorations on the road allowance and don't expect to have to lease the land in order to do that. Sidewalk cafes occupy a portion of the sidewalk. They don't occupy the entire sidewalk right to the portion of the road traveled by vehicular traffic like this lease proposes. The first speaker, I think, made a very important point. It was the gentleman from Fenwick who talked about the need for bicycle lanes there and the need for sidewalks for pedestrian safety there. And I know we have a whole bunch of emails which we received which have been reproduced by staff, but there's the two most important ones aren't in here. There was a couple of correspondents who pointed out the need for the public to be able to safely use that side of the road. One of them mentioned the connection to Chippewa that side of the road permits, and another one I think was a runner who pointed out why they like to run that stretch of Portage Road. So I don't think it's practical. I know what I don't agree with is the one whereas in the preamble, whereas the council of the landlord is of the view that the property is not currently required for the use of the traveling public. I cannot support this bylaw because of that clause. I am not of the view that the property is currently not required for the use of the traveling public. I believe it is, and I think the other difference here between sidewalk cafes and what's being discussed here is the proposed restriction of the common law right of passage. I don't recall ever seeing a proposed restriction of the common law right of passage being in the wording of any sidewalk cafe agreements that have come before me. And I think we might be setting a very dangerous precedent here. Somebody mentioned a slippery slope, and I can see where this would be really useful to private businesses in a lot of other situations. Sometimes different areas of the city from time to time have problems with prostitutes frequenting the areas, and if prostitution becomes a problem in front of a business or two in particular, the owners of those businesses might want to obtain a lease over the public road allowance right to the traveled portion of the roadway where the vehicles pass in order to be able to prohibit the prostitutes. I know when I'm up in Toronto, a lot of times, the areas of Toronto I like to go visit. A lot of times I'm passing street people sprawled out drunk on the sidewalk, sleeping there with a cup beside them, and I can see where the owners of the properties that they're in front of would probably like to be able to obtain a lease over the public land there and prohibit those people from passing out in front of their businesses or remaining there if they do. I can see where abortion clinics could avail themselves of this sort of thing to help keep protesters away. And I think it would be very beneficial for anybody who has an issue with scofflaws. In fact, I see the clerk failed to include it, but I sent him sort of a tongue-in-cheek email this afternoon based I used as a template Marineland's original expression of interest in the lease, and I plagiarized their words, and I explained how I have regular problems with people who are not following the city's bylaw regarding the collection of the feces one's dog has left behind. And I occasionally, well actually more than occasionally, I regularly have problems with people who are thumbing their noses at our nuisance bylaw and leaving things on the public road allowance in front of my property in infraction of that bylaw. And to this date, the city has failed to enforce those two bylaws. So for the two properties where I have the biggest problem, I would like to lease the public road allowance in front of them so that I can keep the public who bring their dogs along and don't clean up after them from bringing those dogs by anymore, and the members of the public who are throwing things down on the public road allowance in the front of the two properties in question, to prohibit those people from passing there anymore. And this is part of my beautification efforts for those properties. I mean, like we can see here that we're opening a very big door, and next thing you know, the public's not going to be sure where they can't walk on what appears to be a public sidewalk, or where they can bicycle on what appears to be a public roadside. And I just am really leery of what we're getting into. A couple of people have mentioned the possible violation of charter rights and freedoms protections. If that's the case, then we are treading into a territory where we definitely should not go. But overall, I just am not of the view that the property is not currently required for the use of the traveling public. I think it is.
Okay. Is there any other comments of council? Yes, we got Councillor Ioannoni, Councillor Gates.
Seriously? Councillor Wing highlighted it that the report says the council is of the mind. I cannot tell you how long I've stood here and been preached to that 5 beats 4. If 5 of us vote for this motion, then the council of the day is of that mind. That's what the vote's going to tell you. I represented you at the Parks Commission last week for the 125th anniversary for the Niagara Parks Police. Councillor Gates was there also. When I came out of Marineland, the protesters were protesting in front of Marineland. They had from point A, where we're going to cut off, all the way across the front, and I'm sorry I had cars behind me or I would have took a picture. They had more than enough space. To say that we're tramping on their freedoms and rights, that they're not going to be able to protest, is BS at the highest level. She is I was. She is tongue-in-cheek in regards to her comments, and I understand that, but really, if we're as brilliant as the gentleman says we are, then common sense will dictate as application upon application comes before us. I don't think we're opening a slippery slope. I think what we're saying is we want to make sure that it's safe, that the customers are not accosted, that nobody is hurt protesting, that people aren't in an accident with the protesters stopping them at the entrance.
Please, ma'am.
Really?
Please, ma'am. The discussion is just right here, right now.
I
Thank you.
understand now why he wants to move them. So that's the motion before us. I don't think we're infringing on anything other than what Mr. Holler's asked us to do, and that's safety, and that's the inconvenience, and that's what he's asking us.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Gates. Councillor Gates, you had a comment, please?
Yeah, thanks very much, and certainly do appreciate the debate. I'm in the mind, quite frankly, that this is about stopping the protests. How you go and look at it one way or the other, that's what this is about. The council has the right to Councillor Ioannoni's point that the council votes 5-4, that's the way it is. But the reality is that I believe that's what it's about. I've listened to the debate, I've listened to the residents from all over, quite frankly, the area. It's not just residents from Niagara Falls, from all over. It's an issue that touches people right across the world, quite frankly. That's the way it is. And at the end of the day, this council can choose to vote the way they think they should vote, and that's fair. But the reality is that I believe that the reason why this is being done is to stop the protest at that particular spot. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I guess we'll decide to see how the vote goes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carrier?
Well, Your Worship, I didn't want to get up and speak, but my vote is not to stop the protesters. My vote is to make it so that the protesters are safer. They've got all kinds of area to protest. I drive by them every single day, and most of them protest in the area that's not affected at all. There are only a few, and a few times when this particular area is affected, and it's when it causes the problems. The protesters are not affected, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's not why I'm voting for this, to stop the protesters. I'm sure this is not going to stop the protesters. It may encourage more protesters. I think this is going to help to keep the ones that do come safe, so that they're not on that piece of road and in conflict with the cars.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other council members that want to comment before I call the vote? Okay, then we've got a recorded vote.
Okay, the motion is to approve the bylaw to execute a lease between the corporation and the City of Niagara Falls and Marineland of Canada Incorporated. Councillor Wing?
Opposed.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Ioannoni?
Yes.
Councillor Morocco?
Yes.
Councillor Mapes?
Yes.
Councillor Carrio?
Yes.
Councillor Gates?
Opposed.
Councillor Pietrangelo?
Aye.
Mayor Diodati?
4.
Passes.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Boycott Sleepy Falls.
Okay, moving on to the bylaws. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional bylaws or amendments to the bylaws?
No, Your Worship.
Okay.
First reading, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Maves, that the bylaws receive a first reading. All those in favor? Okay.
Bylaws 2012-40 to 2012-45 read a first time.
Okay.
Second and third, Your Worship.
Motion by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Maves to give the bylaws a second and third reading. All those in favor? Okay.
Bylaws 2012-40 to 2012-45 read a second and third time and passed.
All right, thank you. New business? Yes, Mr. Beeman. Mr. Beeman.
No, it's 40. We've actually passed it 4 times now.
Okay. New business, Councillor Thompson.
First, well, let me do this in order. Assessment issue with derelict properties in a tourist commercial area. I had 10 pictures that I left on my desk at work just to show you the condition of these properties. As soon as they're torn down, the taxes escalate substantially, so they're all standing there. There was one property that I've been working on for probably 3 years, where the individual had a residential house on Hunter, just off of Victoria Avenue. There were complaints about the condition of the house. He finally removed the house. It was immediately tourist commercial. There was somebody parking cars on it. They accused him of running a business there. If you go by, there are huge, big 4-foot by 4-foot blocks all around the property. You can't get on if you wanted to. And he has appealed his assessment every year for the last 5 years and has not really heard anything on this whatsoever. And the problem is that dealing with a local gentleman who does appeals, a former assessor for the provincial assessment, says that this area, when a house is torn down and it's in tourist commercial, it becomes immediately tourist commercial. There are other jurisdictions and districts that when the house is torn down, it does not become tourist commercial until an application for tourist commercial is applied for. And I can't believe that our people in this area are being penalized for that, where other people in other areas are off the hook. It cleans up the area, it protects the property, and I don't know why we don't have a report back on this, but I'd like to see if we can't investigate this. If we're a district that the Niagara region is different from someplace else, then I want to know that immediately and make a request to our Member of Parliament and through the appropriate minister to make sure that that does not continue. I'd so move.
Okay, so now hopefully we didn't already do this once before, because we need to get this done. Because exactly what you're saying, you drive down certain streets, there's derelict houses next to wonderful commercial properties, and why would you rip it down if your taxes are going to go through the roof? Why would you do that? Exactly. It's ridiculous. Okay, so just in case, we'll make no mistake about it, we want this thing done right away. So we got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Call the vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So let's get something back on that.
Last week I brought up about the people mover out on Lundy's Lane in particular. Am I missing something?
Yeah, we think there was already a motion made on this. You brought it up already once.
Yeah, but I'm continuing on because when I brought it up 2 weeks ago, I said, where do we stand on this? Yeah. And I turned around to Mr. Dren, and he said, it's all been looked after. Did you check the tape today? Yes. And what did he say? It's all been taken care of. So, the next day I get a call from Mr. Ross Barr from Lundy's Lane and saying, thank you very much, I saw the TV, and hopefully we're going to get our service restored the way it was. He calls me during the week and says, it's back to 7 o'clock. They're not going out there and picking people up in the evening. One fellow went down on the people mover, came back, tried to come back later in the evening, had to take a cab back. Was very upset. Not too good for the traveling public and their experience here. Anyway, I don't want to talk all night. Mr. Barr, and who do you have with you?
Well, hold on a sec before we do that. Just hold on one second, Mr. Barr. I'd like to first get Mr. Stewart just to comment, and then we'll get Mr. Barr to come up, because maybe do you have a resolution of this, or the CAO want to just deal with this? Okay, let's get an answer from these guys, and we'll find out, and then we'll get Mr. Barr up here.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we just actually had a meeting today of the staff. Mr. Dren, as you can see, is not here. He has some family issues. So the treasurer and I, Mr. Harrison, met late this afternoon. The issue that was unresolved is the budgeting for the service. There's been some delay because of the delay in the implementation of the WEGO system and not having monies come to us from the Parks Commission as a result of that as early as we would have liked. But what we've talked about today is that we will be implementing the revised schedule as of this Friday, and for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings we'll be going to a 1 o'clock a.m. stop time, and then Monday to Thursday an 11 o'clock stop time, and that'll run through until June 30th, and then on July 1st we'll start with a 1 hour a.m. 7 day a week service until we flip that over to the WEGO system, which is slated to be somewhere around the middle of July, early August.
How's this sound, Mr. Barr?
Yeah, I would motion, make a motion that Mr. Barr speak.
Okay, I've got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing for Mr. Barr to speak. All those in favor? Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, on May the 22nd, we sent a letter to yourself and Council, and all we're asking for is that the bus service be restored, as we were assured it would be through all our discussions about the BTS and, you know, advertising a 12-hour pass. The guy buys it at 2 o'clock and can't get back. He felt he was lied to. And he vented on me. But, I mean, we're looking bad. And not only that, Lundy's Lane is being, as remote as we are, we need that service. Back in the early 80s, we implemented, and I believe you were mayor at the time, and there was a petition came forward, and the council saw fit to bring about what was called the Fall Shuttle. And it was very successful because the people out there supported it. And it will continue to be supported. And of course, when the BTS is in there, then it's going to be a very successful system. But right now, we're dead in the water. I mean, to tell you that people can go down to the falls and participate in the various functions, and then they got to be back like a curfew, that's not right. That's not tourism. They're being punished for coming to Niagara Falls. So we'd like the Battle of Lundy's Lane to end tonight and get this thing resolved. Take it back to where it was last year, like we were promised, and we're happy.
So is that essentially what you're doing, Dave? So what
no, they're cutting it off at 11 during the week.
Yes, it'll be, what the plan is right now is to go Monday to Thursday till 11 o'clock, but that would just be up until the end of June. On the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it'll run to 1, and then starting at the end of June, we'd be running 1 o'clock 7 days a week. And I don't believe, and Dave can correct me, Mr. Stewart, if we ran later than 11 o'clock during the week in June last year. I'm not sure.
There's your schedule.
Yeah, and I have them too, and he did.
We handed these out to every person who bought a pass, and I brought one with us so that you wouldn't have to guess.
Yeah, Councillor Inoue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an overview. 2011, you had 4 shuttle buses. You had the blue line that went into Table Rock and the Horseshoe Falls and Marine Land. You had the green, the red, the blue line. You had 12 drivers who were employed, and they ran from 8:45 to roughly 1:30, 7 days a week. This year you have 2 shuttle buses. So I want to know, are we putting all 4 shuttle buses back? You have no blue line that goes into Marine Land, Table Rock, and Horseshoe Falls. Are those happening also? Are they going to be able to get to those places? You have 1 driver employed weekly. You have 2 drivers employed on the weekend. You have 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Thursday, and you have 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I will tell you where I get angry. At no point did those decisions ever come to this council. So when the tourism industry is calling council saying, oh, by the way, do you know those hours are reduced and did you improve it? We look at them and we say, what are you talking about? Every one of you have received the flurry of transit emails that I started last night at 7 o'clock that have still continued today, and I will tell you 99% of those questions are still unanswered. But I did find out the route, and I did find out the reductions, and I will tell you, sir, we did not approve of them. We did not know about them. This council did not direct any changes to the hospitality industry. People can't get to work. I want to know how transit made these decisions and these cuts, and I want to know why the operational expense wasn't in the budget, because it wasn't. All of a sudden we have money to do it. I find that remarkable. Imagine that. I want to know, I want answers to the questions that I emailed out to everybody today. I think we need an in-camera. Quite frankly, I called the clerk. I asked if we could have an in-camera tonight because I think there are many issues in regards to WeGo, employees, and things that would fit in camera. We could not have that because we did not post a prior announcement, but I am not here for the next council meeting, but the one prior after that, I would like an in-camera session where we discuss what I think is the big black sucking hole of money of Niagara Falls Transit, and I would really like us to get an overview of the dollars. I asked today for an overview of what WeGo dollars have been allocated to that department, what has been spent, what is left. I don't have that as of tonight. I even came in and asked for it.
Let's get some answers here.
Perhaps I can start off, Mr. Mayor, and within the budget, and the treasurer can help me out here as we go along, but in the budget, we had allocated about $400,000 from city tax money towards what we'll call the visitor transportation system. That was in reports that have been approved by council, and there was about $1 million contribution from the Parks Commission. So we're dealing with the total operating budget for the system of about $1.4 million. When the WeGo system was delayed, we went back to staff. I actually asked Mr. Dren, what can we do to put something else in place that will keep us on that $400,000 budget? That's the amount of service that you've got in front of you. And that's where that came from. We said that's what we can buy for the money that we've got, because we will not have the Parks Commission's $1 million coming to us until the system starts. So we were behind the 8 ball in terms of the money we were counting on from the Parks Commission to be funding this starting in June was delayed. Okay? So with our $400,000, we had to go and see what kind of service we could buy for that $400,000 that would take us to this period. When the staff did the analysis after the report came here to council 2 weeks ago, they started to look at the numbers, and that was about the level of service we could buy. When I was away last week, when we got back, we had a further talk and said, okay, we've got to address this request for the additional service that will take us to 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock. What additional money is that going to be? We figured that that was going to be somewhere around $75,000, and what we reviewed today was a people mover reserve fund that we have that was identified to council in a couple of reports previously, that there's money there that we could utilize to backstop this additional expenditure. So that's what we're here today indicating to you, and to say we just had that discussion with our staff this afternoon.
Okay. Councillor Ioannoni?
Mr. Mayor, it doesn't solve the problem. I have asked my fellow council members that I've had access to, just ask, does anybody know how much, without Mr. Todd telling you, is in the People Mover Reserve Fund? Does anybody remember that figure? $4.2 million. I met with Mr. Todd at 5:30 and with a staff member to discuss a problem. I didn't know that $4.2 million, and I thought maybe I'm getting old. I'm close to 50, so my memory's not what it was. I asked fellow council members, they don't remember that figure either. So I'm going to ask Mr. Todd to re-provide those reports to council, but I want to say this. At no point, and I could pull that tape because I voted against your operational budget based on your transit monies, you did not highlight to this council, by the way, if you reduce it, you're not going to have your fall shuttle. It was never explained in the detail you had tonight. It took councillors to force this. My problem is we shouldn't have to ask for these things. We shouldn't have to force it with flurries of emails. We should be provided with information, and that'll be a full discussion hopefully after the June 26th meeting.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, we had those numbers in the budget for 3 months. The documents were here. We were here every Tuesday night. and detail was in the binders. And we would have been happy to answer any of those questions on any budget line within any budget that was here. We at that time didn't know to highlight any of that because at that time when the budget was approved, we didn't know the WeGo system was going to be delayed. We thought we had enough money in the budget to get us through this operational year. And because of the delay, we're now faced with this shortfall, which we believe we can fund from that reserve that has previously been reported to Council. It's been in a couple of reports on the system. Anyways, that's how we would propose to do this. So we can deliver the service that Lundy's Lane is looking for. And that would be our expectation tonight, that we'd move forward and do that, get the service there, but just with the understanding of Council that we've said all along that with the WeGo system, that any operational deficiency in the current year would be funded from that reserve. So whether it was a deficiency because of the Lundy's Lane or whether it was an operating deficiency because of other circumstances, we've always indicated that we would do that, and then we would go back and reassess at the end of that year and see where our budget needed to take us. So we're saying here we can resolve this problem today by putting the enhanced service on up to the level, I guess not quite to the level, but Council can make the motion if they want to make it 7 days a week till 1 o'clock. We can just put the motion on the floor. We're happy to do that, but just with the understanding of Council that any shortfall we would be going to that reserve to fund the deficiency.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, you make the motion then? You want to reinstate the service?
11 o'clock weekdays is not sufficient for
During peak season,
Oh, no,
11 o'clock is...
No, for the next couple of weeks, for the next 2 weeks in June.
Well, when is the legal loading going to go? They say August 5th?
August 3rd.
If I could just go over the times again,
Well,
perhaps,
I
Councillor.
just want to keep...
No, but he's not, I don't think he's understood. Let's get, hold on, Mr. Barr. Explain one more time what you're proposed right now, if you would, please,
Okay.
Mr. Todd.
Monday to Thursday during the week until June 30th, we would run till 11 o'clock. On the weekend, starting this Friday, we would go Friday, Saturday, Sunday until 1 o'clock. Starting July 1st, or whatever, I don't know what those weekend dates are, we would go 7 days a week till 1 o'clock until the WeGo system is implemented.
So it'll be till 1 o'clock, all 7 days a week?
Yes.
Starting
after the end of June?
Yes. And weekends till 1 o'clock until...
Starting now.
Well, that's a big improvement, yes. I can't speak, I have to go back to the board I'm representing, but, you know, that's a much better situation. And I'm sorry.
So I'll make a motion that we wait to hear back from Mr. Barr
But in the
and
meantime,
Lundy's Lane
implement.
Board. If they're happy, let them know. If not, I would make the motion if they're not happy and they need the service, that we keep the same service.
Well, now, our next meeting's not until June the 26th, right? Right, so
that staff can do that. Staff can...
So in the meantime, do you like this enhanced service that Mr. Todd just...
Mr. Mayor, if we could leave it at this, that we would go on the schedule I just described unless we hear back from the Lundy's Lane BIA. Right. And if the Lundy's Lane BIA says they'd like to expand it further, I think we'd say that subject to Council's approval tonight on that we would extend it to that 1 o'clock as well.
Okay. So does everybody understand? So we're going to move, there's a motion for the enhanced service, but if staff hear from Mr. Barr or the BIA, then we're prepared, we're given pre-approval to go to the full-out service earlier than the 1st of July.
So this proposal would bring the service in when? Immediately?
It would be starting Friday night, this Friday night the 15th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, 1 o'clock. Monday to Thursday, we go back to 11 o'clock, and that's scheduled to repeat until the end of June. And starting on July 1st, the service would run until 1 o'clock every night, 7 days a week, until the WeGo system is implemented.
So the people will be able to get a ride back from seeing Mr. Willenda do the walk.
1 o'clock.
Yes, it'll be 1 o'clock this Friday night. Yes.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to call the vote then. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. That's great, thank you. Any other new business? Councillor Peter Angelo. And Councillor Morocco.
Very quickly, Your Worship, there's a young athlete at my school, and I have to boast a little bit. His name's JT Hunt, and on the weekend he won gold medal in OFSA for high jump.
Wow.
Yeah, he's in the senior boys division, and I wanted to give him congratulations, and I was hoping that you could send him congratulations, Your Worship, through your office, and perhaps have him down here and congratulate him. Gold medal, Your Worship.
No,
He's the best in the province.
The best in the province. Well, you know what, if Councillor could get us the relevant information, we'll have him here at our council meeting, and we'll do something nice for him. That's great. Excellent. Do you need a motion on that, Mr. Clerk? Or no, we're good with that? Okay, great. That's well done. Councillor Morocco.
Yes, Your Worship, just quickly. Rotary Rib Fest this weekend, so hopefully people don't forget. And also, I just want to also say that the YWCA had a tea social and fashion show celebrating their 85th anniversary, and they did a fabulous job, which I was the MC at, by the way. So it was good. And then I think Dean has some pictures, and I'm just going to tell you what happened today. And it was perfect because as Sandra Sable came here to talk about raising money for cancer, I want to just actually say congratulations to our service center and staff. Recently, James Sticka, city's environmental service coordinator, found out that his wife Becky had her cancer came back. Becky is now taking part in an investigation on a new drug because right now there is no known cure for the type of breast cancer Becky has, triple negative. Everyone was asked if they could do a bake sale. So anyway, all the women down there got together, and including my husband, who passed the buck to me, by the way, and did baked goods. So I was glad to see that I did go down, basically to make sure that nobody was ill. In an effort to raise money in support of Becky's Believers, as the Rally for Life, the ladies at the Municipal Center banded together and held a bake sale, and they raised just over $2,600. Well, the deal was that if they raised over $1,000, this young lady, who you see here, Jeanette, is it Topliff? Would shave her head. Oh my God, she did, as you can see. Not just a little, but right down. God bless her. And anyway, the top bidder actually was this gentleman who had the shears and got to, so it wasn't a barber or it wasn't a hairdresser, it was just one of the guys that bid the highest bid to shave her head. And then if another gentleman, and his name is Dave White, he's a mechanic, he said, well, if they raised over $2,000, he'd shave his head. And he had a long hair and a ponytail, which you might see the ponytail hanging in his hand. He saves his ponytail. So, you know, congratulations to the staff and the corporation for allowing that to happen. It took place on lunch. So I stopped in then to raise over $2,600 in that short time. And I know the fire department and everyone was involved too. There was more than just the service center and those people. So again, thank you very much, the staff. They are also interested in putting an end to cancer. So thank you.
Councillor, what was your number to shave your head? Do you have a number?
Oh, they were looking.
But do it. Councillor Gates and Councillor Wing.
Yeah, just real quick, Jim. I was wondering if we could get a report from staff on how we handle our real estate, both buying and selling. And I'll give you some of the examples that have kind of frustrated me over the last little while. One was the Optimus Park, where I talked about the $300,000 being offered for $200,000 an acre land, and our solicitor stood up and said, well, it didn't come through me. And it kind of made it look it didn't look good anyways, the way it come out. You take a look at the Niagara Falls Memorial Arena, we had said go back and ask for another couple $100,000. It was done through a phone call rather than an official document. We're dealing with a company, a corporation that's you know, well over $100 million on a yearly basis. The bus terminal was another one that was done a little different. I just think that if we're going to be selling and buying land, we should be doing it in a very consistent manner all the time. So I'd just like to put a motion for it that we get a report on how we're doing land transactions at the City of Niagara Falls. I think it's important to do.
So get a report on land transfer policies within the city. Moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. Is there any discussion to that motion? Call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's passed. Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Yes, Councillor Peter Hento actually reminded me. I forgot to mention that when I represented you at the Accessibility Awards, there were some Niagara Falls residents there getting awards. I might have missed a few people, but I know I recognized Heather Deans with the Therapy Tales group, which was being recognized that day, and Lynette York was with an aphasia group, which works with stroke victims who have lost their ability to speak and socializes with them and works with them to try and recover that. West Lane Secondary School has a club that was there for an award that day, and our very own Ian Greaves received a very prestigious volunteer award, and I just wanted to note that. It was really nice and surprising to see so many Niagara Falls people there being recognized that day.
Thank you. And I did forget to mention earlier in our list, Niagara Parks Commission Police, 125th. We were away in Saskatchewan, but I appreciate Councillor Gates and Iannone representing us there. And congratulations to the Niagara Parks Police for 125 years of service within the community. So is there any other new business?
I forgot to mention that I won the door prize at the French.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Thompson, did you win? I didn't know you won. He won the door prize.
Promotional video.
So he gets a $2,500 self-promotional video that they're going to do for him in front of the green screen.
Every Tuesday night.
What's that? Yeah, yeah. So we're going to have him like super counselor flying through this